follow us, and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, all right?
Oh, okay, I will.
All right, let me just see your documents here. All right, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Okay. Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of workshop or webinar or something.
Yes,
just to inform us of what is happening.
It is, and I'm happy that you said that because we will be having our IP week this week, our annual IP week, starting the 23rd of April until the 2nd of May. We will be on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I believe Twitter as well. So you can just go on here and just follow us, and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, all right?
Oh, okay, I will.
All right, let me just see your documents here. All right, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of workshop or webinar or something.
Yes,
just to inform us of what is happening.
It is, and I'm happy that you said that because we will be having our IP week this week, our annual IP week, starting the 23rd of April until the 2nd of May. We will be on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I believe Twitter as well. So you can just go over there and just follow us, and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, all right?
Oh, okay, I will.
All right, let me just see your documents here. All right, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of workshop or webinar or something.
Yes,
just to inform us of what is happening.
It is, and I'm happy that you said that because we will be having our IP week this week, our annual IP week, starting the 23rd of April until the 2nd of May. We will be on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I believe Twitter as well. So you can just go over there and just follow us, and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, alright?
Okay, I will.
Alright, let me just see your documents, please. Alright, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Okay.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I am doing okay.
Awesome.
I'm here to copyright a trademark for my patent.
You want to copyright the trademark for your patent?
Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of workshop or webinar or something.
Yes,
just
it
to
is.
inform us of what is happening.
It is, and I'm happy that you said that because we will be having our IT week this week, our annual IT week, starting the 23rd of April until the 2nd of May. We will be on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I believe Twitter as well. So you can just go over there and just follow us and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, alright?
Okay, I will.
Alright, let me just see your documents, please. Alright, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Okay.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I am doing okay.
Awesome.
I'm here to copyright a trademark for my patent.
You want to copyright the trademark for your patent?
Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of workshop or webinar or something.
Yes,
just
it
to
is.
inform us of what is happening.
It is, and I'm happy that you said that because we will be having our IT week this week, our annual IT week, starting the 23rd of April until the 2nd of May. We will be on all the social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, I believe Twitter as well. So you can just go over there and just follow us and you can always see the live events that are going to be on.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, alright?
Okay, I will.
Alright, let me just see your documents, please. Alright, we'll just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist.
Okay.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I am doing okay.
Awesome.
I'm here to copyright a trademark for my patent.
You want to copyright the trademark for your patent?
Yes.
Alright, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that's a copyright, no patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys will have some form of work.
Hi, this is Fernando.
Property Office. I hope you're hearing me clearly. It's my pleasure to welcome you to, well, the penultimate event for Intellectual Property Week 2021. And today we're going to be focusing on a topic that's very important and critical to the MSME sector, not only in Jamaica, but globally. So we're looking at Iep evaluation and IP-based financing for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. So I am so happy that you could join us. I noticed that we have quite a few attendees, and we're hoping that as the morning progresses, that more persons will be able to join. We have a very exciting panel lined up. We have from the Inter-American Development Bank, we have Kayla Grant, who promotes technological adoption and the strengthening of innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems in Latin America and the Caribbean. She's a member of the American Evaluation Association and the Project Management Institute. Kayla holds a master's in international trade policy from the University of the West Indies and a bachelor's in international business and economics from the University of Indianapolis, and a monitoring and evaluation certification from the American University. So Kayla, now that I've given you a proper introduction, I'm going to invite you to greetings on behalf of the Inter-American Development Bank. Thank
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ms. Lily Claire Belami. And I made a rookie mistake of forgetting to unmute myself and talking to myself. But good morning. It worked eventually, yes. Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. A special welcome again, and thank you to Ms. Lily Claire Belami, the Executive Director of JIPO. We have Dr. Marcus Goffe here with us as well. And a definite welcome to Mr. Daniel Best from the Caribbean Development Bank, who is a great partner of ours at the IDB and Compete Caribbean. And I welcome as well my colleagues on this project who will be presenting today, and our speakers from the BOJ, PSOJ, and the DBJ as well. I'm delighted to be representing the IDB and Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility at today's event, discussing IP evaluation, IP-based financing for MSMEs. This is in the context, as Lily Claire mentioned, of the IP week and the theme of IP and MSMEs, taking your ideas to market. And this particular project, which is called Strengthening the Intellectual Property Ecosystem to Increase Innovation, Competitiveness, and Growth in Jamaica, is especially focused on our MSMEs. So it's very convenient, and it's great that this week is exactly what we're focusing on, are our MSMEs. And this particular project is being financed by the Compete Caribbean Partnership Facility. And just to give a background on who we are, we're a private sector development program, and we provide technical assistance to support business climate reform and technology and innovation within SMEs across the 13 Caribbean countries. And this particular program is jointly funded by the Inter-American Development Bank, the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, the Caribbean Development Bank, who is here with us, and the Government of Canada. Now, this particular project's main objective is to strengthen the IP ecosystem in Jamaica. This is with the objective in mind that we'll be supporting our MSMEs in leveraging their intangible assets, and particularly their IP assets, to drive innovation, competitiveness, and growth. And a couple of years ago, when we first started dialogue with the JIPO, it was actually in response to a call for proposals that we had under our pillar for enhancing the business and innovation climate. In response, JIPO submitted a concept note, and since then we've had a very great relationship in developing this particular project. And this project comes as part of the IDB's larger objectives and interventions that seek to strengthen the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. In particular, it very much aligns with the IDB's 2025 vision, which our priority areas are, especially with the post-pandemic recovery, is strengthening of regional value chain, digital economy, and a support for our SMEs, along with gender equality and climate change. And most notably, I would also like to make reference to the Biggie program, which I see that Chris from the DBJ should be here today. But the Biggie is essentially a loan operation in Jamaica, where we're tapping into the innovativeness and dynamism of the private sector. And particularly, we're supporting firms both from throughout their stages of their life cycle, from the early idea stage to the high growth, to more established SMEs that face challenges with innovating and growing. And the reason why I want to mention this, especially for our viewers here today, is because the program does have a line of support specifically for IP development and commercialization, and as well as technology transfer. And so I would encourage everyone to definitely visit the DBJ's website, thinkbiggie.com. I'm promoting it to find out more about this. But this project is one that, along with the JIPO, I'm very passionate about. It's a very novel solution to addressing one of the major barriers that our firms face in pursuing innovation and growth objectives, which is accessing finance. And over the last year, as a result of the COVID pandemic, the private sector has been confronted with very much unexpected challenges, which they have pivoted and adapted to, but which has disproportionately affected our MSMEs, especially those that rely on their intangible assets. Couple this with evolving changes in consumer tastes and preferences that have impacted consumer demand, new health guidelines brought on by the pandemic, and especially the area that I would like to focus on is the growth of the digital economy, which many firms have had to adopt new technologies. And what we've been seeing is that a firm's competitiveness and even its survival is increasingly being shaped and determined by their ability to generate value and obtain gains from the digital economy. The digital economy, as you know, relies heavily on intangible assets and innovations such as blockchain technology, VR, AR, big data, et cetera. And according to recent data from the European Patent Office, at least 1/3 of all patent filings have been digital in nature. Therefore, it is becoming increasingly important to not only protect your digital inventions, especially through the use of the IP system, but also developing strong IP strategies for monetizing those IP assets. And at the core of this project in particular is a realization that tools, particularly IP tools, are critical aspects of the business model strategy, especially as it pertains to pursuing innovation and growth. And so with this, I want to commend the government of Jamaica, and especially the JIPO, for its commitment to supporting the growth and innovation of our MSMEs in Jamaica. We look forward to a continued partnership with the JIPO on this project and to all our stakeholders here today. And for those of you who are tuning in, this will be a very informative discussion, as Lily Pierre indicated. You will learn about tools that you will soon have available to utilize and leverage your intangible assets. And we look forward to hearing your stories. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kayla. Thank you. That was excellent. And as you said, we really are quite committed to this project, and we enjoy working with our different support partners. Speaking about partners, it's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Daniel Best, who is the director in the Projects Department. As director of the Projects Department of the Caribbean Development Bank, Daniel Best leads the team responsible for the bank's investment, lending, and grant portfolio. He's a member of the advisory management team to the president and accountable for the management pipeline development, appraisal, and implementation of the bank's lending and technical assistance programs in all sectors in which the bank operates. He became director in 2015, and since then, Mr. Best has consistently led the department in delivering strong results, which form the majority contribution in the bank achieving its critical approval and disbursement targets. Further to his leadership of the projects team, Daniel is also the business owner for the Operations 365 Critical Path Redesign and Standard Work initiatives within the transformation program. Mr. Best has held various management positions within the projects department, including that of division chief and portfolio manager in the economic infrastructure division, where he was responsible for all infrastructure interventions, including those in the transportation, water and sanitation, and energy sectors. He's a civil engineer with a Master's of Science in Construction Engineering and Management from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, MBA from the University of Durham, and a project management professional designation from the Project Management Institute. He possesses over 26 years successful experience building, leading, and functioning within multidisciplinary and multicultural teams and work environments. Prior to joining the Caribbean Development Bank, Mr. Best was the regional project manager of First Caribbean International Bank, where he successfully led the implementation of the organization's regional infrastructure development mandate. Having begun his professional career in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Best has since worked in both public and private sectors in all aspects of project design, leadership, and implementation across the Caribbean. We're quite happy to welcome you, Mr. Best, and look forward to your extending your greetings and to continue to work with us here at JIPO and Jamaica. Thanks so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bellamy. Thank you, and thank you for welcoming me here. Thank you, Ms. Grant from ADB, and I'd like to also extend greetings to all of the other speakers this morning, and certainly to our distinguished panelists who we will hear their unique insights and perspectives later in the morning. It would be remiss of me, having taken the mic, not to extend a special welcome to my brother, Chris Brown from the DBJ as well. You know, he's on here. So I just want to bring greetings on behalf of the president and other members of the management team at the Caribbean Development Bank. I want to begin my remarks this morning by, of course, thanking Dr. Marcus Goffe, the Deputy Director of JIPO, for inviting me to deliver these remarks on behalf of CDB as JIPO celebrates Intellectual Property Week 2021. I also want to congratulate JIPO for its continuing advocacy to increase public awareness about the protection and rights of creativity and invention, and to highlight the fundamental importance of intellectual property rights to regional economic growth. Ladies and gentlemen, it is widely recognized that the MSME sector is arguably the most important in combating poverty and stimulating economic growth within the region, contributing between 60 and 70% of GDP, and accounting for approximately 50% of employment in the bank's borrowing member countries, or BMCs as we refer to them. Indeed, it has been noted that 97% of the private sector in Jamaica is comprised of MSMEs. Despite being dubbed the engine of growth, access to finance remains one of the binding constraints affecting MSMEs. This has been outlined in the latest World Bank 2020 Doing Business report, which showed the Caribbean averaging 135 of the 190 countries surveyed. What are some of the causes of this poor performance, you may ask? Research suggests the following contributing factors: underdeveloped financial services industries across our BMCs, high cost of finance, high collateral requirements, information asymmetries, and disparities in access to finance by women-owned businesses. Notwithstanding these glum results, however, like the living legend Usain Bolt, we recognize that Jamaica has outpaced other Caribbean countries, having achieved the highest regional rank of 15 on the access to credit component of the Doing Business report. Kudos to you in Jamaica. In this regard, we laud the government of Jamaica for its focus on strengthening of the business environment, including areas related to legal rights, credit information frameworks, and credit registries. We are also pleased that CDB, together with ADB, through Compete Caribbean, provided critical support, which led to implementation of key reforms, including the drafting of legislation to facilitate movable collateral, the design and establishment of the securities interest in the personal property registry, as well as the institutional strengthening of the Companies Office of Jamaica, where the registry resides. But we know that sustained access to finance by the productive sector is not a sprint event, and there is still work to be done. It is against this background that CDB is extremely pleased to partner with IDB and JIPO in this innovative project, which seeks to strengthen the intellectual property ecosystem in Jamaica by helping to create the conditions for IP monetization, most specifically, commercialization and collateralization. This will make it possible for MSMEs to be able to effectively leverage their IP assets for financing. We anticipate that this project will help in addressing some of the critical gaps in the current IP framework. These include the lack of public and stakeholder awareness about the importance and value of IP assets and registration of IP, and the lack of expertise in the area of IP asset valuation. We're also excited about the project component supporting the digital transformation of JIPO's paper-based IP registration system in order to increase the efficiency of business processes, such as intellectual property rights searches, examination and registration procedures, and to improve the experience of users of the IP system. This project is certainly timely for several reasons. And if you'd permit me, I just want to perhaps outline 4 of these reasons. The first is early indications suggest that since the start of the pandemic, access to finance by MSMEs has been stymied, as financial institutions adopt more stringent lending policies, including increased collateral requirements, as MSMEs are considered to be even riskier propositions, particularly those dependent on the tourism sector. While there is increasing recognition that intellectual property rights are assets that have value and can be used as a form of security, there is a dearth of capacity within the region to value IP, especially staff of financial institutions. Secondly, as regional economies become ever more knowledge intensive, the stakes involved in IP are rising. Economic and technological changes mean that an appropriate and enabling IP framework has become one of the prerequisites for prosperity. Thirdly, IP-related spending has come to dominate many firms' investments across the developed world and also in the bank's borrowing member countries, especially as services continue to dominate our economies. And fourthly and finally, and perhaps most importantly, there is increasing recognition that the orange economy plays an important role in the diversification of our economies, but that many brands, inventions, designs, creative and literary works are vulnerable to being copied and commercially exploited by third parties. In conclusion, as we focus on navigating an uncertain future, CDB remains committed to designing and supporting innovative solutions to help our MSMEs not only stay in business, but rebuild and rebound even stronger than before. In this regard, we will continue to craft programs of support which focus on capacity building, access to finance, and improving the business climate. We trust that this project will achieve the anticipated transformation in our financial sector and that we can replicate its success in other CDB borrowing member countries. Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. West. That was really an excellent overview of the project and also a recognition of the situation that we're faced, not only in Jamaica, but in the rest of the region, where the MSME sector is such a critical and important sector to our economies, and the ravages that the pandemic has brought to the fore, and the difficulty that the members of this sector are facing in accessing financing. This project really is quite timely and necessary. So I thank you so much for the commitment of the Caribbean Development Bank as we continue to work with you on this very important project. And it's my pleasure now to introduce our very own Deputy Director and Legal Counsel at the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, Dr. Marcus Goffe. He is an attorney at law with over 20 years of experience in several areas of law, including intellectual property law, entertainment law, media law, and human rights law. Marcus holds a Bachelor of Laws degree from the University of the West Indies, a Master of Laws degree in intellectual property law, and a Doctor of Philosophy degree from the Queen Mary University of London. His PhD focused on the protection of traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions in the Caribbean. It's now my pleasure to invite Dr. Goffe to give an overview of the project. Dr. Goffe.
Pleasant morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone is hearing me. Thanks for joining us this morning, and thanks to Ms. Bellamy for introducing me and for, of course, taking us through this part of the program this morning. Yes, I just wanted to give an overview of this exciting project. You've heard already, of course, from Ms. Kayla Grant from the IDB, who summarized the project nicely, as well as from Mr. Best from the CDB. And so we're very pleased also to have on board with us these important partners, as we seek to merge and bridge the IP advancement agenda and needs, of our Jamaican MSMEs with the financial, and regulatory requirements as well that can pave the path then for an easier path to market. And so in this IP week, this week, taking our ideas to market, we really wanted to focus on how to highlight this project, this very timely project, and has been said, this very novel project trying to really grapple with this issue, how to put more money in the hands of those who are creative and who need it and who can then multiply it, for their own advancement and for the advancement of the nation. So it's a very important project that we're very excited to be implementing after several years of coordinating and planning for it. And we're now at this stage where we're going to be implementing this project. And so I want to also, of course, recognize our project consultants on the project, who we are also looking forward to working with our several stakeholders locally to be able to explore, right, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the opportunities that we have in this space in relation to how we can prepare for better the digital economy and the use of digital IP assets, and essentially how the system of finance can also be supportive of the MSMEs, as I know is our major concern. So that's really what we're trying to do with the project. And so we have several components of the project that are geared towards trying to fill some of the key gaps identified in the ecosystem locally that would make it easier for it to become a reality, right? So essentially what we're hoping to do this morning here is to have the several components of the project, or certainly key components of the project. There are 5 key components of the project, but in terms of the consultancies, they're focused on the financial and regulatory side. We'll be hearing from the consultants involved in the 3 components of the project. Component 1, looking at IP monetization and capacity building, right? So just generally to try to build a culture of IP monetization and, to increase awareness of just the benefits of IP registration, right? Which is very important. And then, of course, commercialization thereafter. We'll be hearing from Dr. Erica Smith of Intellect Management Services, who is the consultant firm for component 1 of the project out of Barbados. Then for component 2 of the project, we'll be looking at IP evaluation, a very key aspect of what is needed for the ecosystem locally to really work, as we are hoping it can for IP-based MSMEs. And so IP evaluation is also a very interesting and I think exciting aspect of the intellectual property and financial market nexus that we need to also look at. And so we'll be led to that component with the development of an IP evaluation guidelines for MSMEs who want to apply for funding, for financial institutions who also are keen to lend on the strength of IP-based assets. And so that will also hopefully provide a framework in which we can again, have a clear understanding of what are the needs and requirements, what are the concerns and the gaps, and try to have it in a more harmonious way work, for the growth of the sector. So we will lead in that component by Valuation Consulting out of the UK, and so we'll be hearing this morning from Dr. Fernando da Cruz Vasconcellos, and again, we'll be having some IP evaluation training, and so we are actually this morning launching the IP evaluation training that will be upcoming, and Dr. Vasconcellos will talk more about that as well, as we seek to build a cadre of IP evaluation experts for Jamaica. And then with component 3, we will be looking at designing and testing a financial product that will, again, be able to work for the MSMEs, to work for the financial institutions, and that can, be able to deal with some of the concerns we know exist in terms of the risk taken on loans when IP is used as collateral, issues surrounding possible areas of a secondary market that may need to be filled. And again, trying to design an innovative financial product that can still, in light of those things, facilitate access to finance in an easier way for MSMEs. So we'll be having in that component research and the design of a financial product by the Kozolchyk National Law Center out of the USA. And this morning we'll be hearing from Executive Director Dr. Marek Dubovec, who will speak about that component and how it's going to also fit in to change the local landscape where IP evaluation and collateralization really is concerned. So I'm going to ask then if I could introduce, or maybe, well, no, I'm going to pass over back to Ms. Bellamy then. Ms. Bellamy will do the honors. So that's just then the overview. Please stay with us for the panel discussion, of course, and we'll be having more details and question and answer then. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marcus. You want to run the program ahead. I agree with you. We soon get there, though.
Too excited. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that really exciting overview of the project. And I'm going to invite Dr. Erica Smith. Erica has worked in business development, the creative industries, governance, and intellectual property rights management for over 20 years. During this time, she has focused on developing countries and has done presentations throughout the CARIFORUM region and as far afield as Greece and Hungary, the Cape Verde Islands, Brazil, Germany, Mexico, Chile, and Togo. She has undergraduate degrees in law and management and a Master of Science degree in international business from a university in the Netherlands, Masters in Intellectual Property Law from the University of Alicante, Spain, and a Master's in International Sports Law and Management from Spain. She undertook her doctoral studies at the University of Agder, Norway. Erica has authored various business management and intellectual property courses and is a head tutor with the World Intellectual Property Organization Academy. Over the years, she has undertaken numerous consultancies and managed for various regional and international business support organizations and governments. Her work has covered business development and intellectual property strategies at the national and organizational level. The sectors she has worked in include fashion, music, animation and film, ICT, and sport. Clients have included the World Intellectual Property Organization, the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, the Jamaica Business Development Corporation, the Caribbean Development Bank, Compete Caribbean, the REACH project of the Inter-American Development Bank, the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, and the Caribbean Export Development Agency. I'm going to invite Erica now to share with us an overview of component 1 of the project. Erica? Okay, we seem to be having some technical difficulties. Erica, can you share? Okay, while we're waiting for Erica, I'm going to, perhaps before we speak to component 1, since we're seems to be having some challenges, I'm gonna ask Dr. Fernando da Cruz Vasconcellos, who will speak about component 2 of the project. Fernando's experience with financial modeling, venture valuation, and IP valuation includes working with clients, including startups, SMEs, and corporations on due diligence, strategic management, investor positioning, and on valuing businesses and intangible assets, including technology, patents, brands, software, trademarks, and copyright materials. Fernando is an invited lecturer at the University of Cambridge, FA Camp University, and the London Business School on topics related to innovation, entrepreneurship, and valuation in private equity. Fernando has over 19 years of professional experience in the design, execution, and management of projects, particularly in the technology and healthcare field in the UK, USA, and Brazil. He has broad international research and industry experience, and he has been director and part of the founding team of 3 technology startup companies, where he led the company's consultancy services, finance, and strategy. Fernando has previously held the post of Senior Teaching Fellow at the University of Cambridge. He has also designed and led the delivery of a master's program and has acted as academic program director for an executive education program for the Cambridge Judge Business School. He speaks English and Portuguese fluently and has high conversational proficiency in Spanish and French. Fernando is a member of the Licensing Executive Society, and he's currently the chair of the IA Management and IP Valuation Committees for West Britain and Ireland. Fernando, I'm going to invite you now to give us an overview of components of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lily Claire, Melanie, for that very kind introductions. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Okay.
Actually, if possible, because it's the first time I'm using this, would it be possible, because I sent my slides through, could we, oh yes, is that working now?
Yes.
Can everyone hear me still?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the presentation.
We can hear and we can see. Your presentation is up.
Super. Thanks again, everyone, for your time today. Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be here. As was said, my name is Fernando Cruz Vasconcellos. I'm a Valuation Director at Valuation Consulting. And today I'm going to be describing component 2, which is an overview of the Iep Evaluation project component. I really wanted to emphasize that what we're trying to do here is seek to bring together in an unbiased way with zero barriers to entry ambitious future practitioners and leaders in promoting the dissemination of knowledge, education, and best practice in both IP management and IP valuation. What we're really trying to aim with everyone involved in the project is to develop a rich collaborative environment with content for all of us, to develop and also to meet like-minded people. So it's really about sharing knowledge and growing together in this really exciting, I think, program, and also beyond the program with colleagues into the future. So I really wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity. If we go on to the, can I flip the slides or? So I really wanted to take a step back here and talk about data. So 90% of the world's data actually has been created in the last 2 years. When I read the statistics, I was really blown away, and it's amazing to think about that. The amount of digital content that's being created is astonishing. Another interesting point is about 4.7 billion active users are using the internet today in the world. Now that only represents 58.7% of people around the world that have access to internet, but that's also incredible. To give you another idea, which is quite important, and I'm speaking of data, and you'll soon see why. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are produced per person per day. Now, a quintillion, if you imagine a byte, it has 18 zeros after the byte. Another interesting fact is about 44 zettabytes made the entire digital universe back in 2020. In 2019, that was just 4.4 zettabytes. Now, again, 1 zettabyte equals around 1 trillion gigabytes. Then the other very interesting thing is machine-generated data accounts for about 40% of internet data, and 60% is actually human-made. Now, in the finance sector with my colleagues, academics, and also practitioners in private equity and in SMEs, everyone is not talking about currency in terms of money. Data is a new currency. So with this in mind, the main question that I want to try to have people think about, and I really want to get people excited and interested in, is how can we determine the strength and value of companies in our IP assets, our intangible assets, which are our most valuable assets in this world of ever increasing complexity, data, and competition. So how can you actually differentiate yourself from everyone else and actually win customers and then build the community and then forge new relationships and so forth. Just a really quick background. So I'm part of Valuation Consulting. So we're based in London, Jersey, and Leeds. We have about a 20-year history. And as Lily Claire kindly mentioned, we specialize in the valuation of companies, intellectual property, and I also look into investment portfolios as a specialty. All things are done for different purposes, and we'll go into that. And one of the core elements that I want to describe is the purpose, right? The purpose is critical when you were thinking about value. And we specialize if valuations are needed for raising investment, or if they're going to be licensing, or if you need to do it for tax purposes, or management incentive schemes, all growing areas in evaluation that are critically important for people to understand and appreciate. I think the other really important thing is trying to make yourself or one quite independent with a structured process. And that's what we're going to try to do also with the valuation guidelines that we're going to be developing with everyone. And lastly, VC is regulated by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and we're a member of the Valuation Research Group. So we have a lot of, I think, knowledge that we're able to share. So I really wanted to kick off here just describing the valuation of business and assets. Now, when we think about a business or an enterprise value, this is normally separated into tangible assets and intangible assets. A lot of these intangible assets are disclosed, so in the books, for instance, of companies, but many other assets are actually undisclosed. Sometimes they're considered goodwill, or they're just not able to be put on the books because of certain, standards or accounting practices. But it's really, really important for us to take really close eye on this because they make such a huge part of company value, and more so in all different sectors of the technology sector, of brand sectors, creative sectors. All the sectors are moving into this direction. Even construction, things that you would normally think about having hard physical assets are moving drastically into this direction of increasing intangible asset percentage in terms of enterprise value. And when we look at firms, about 90% are intangible assets and 10 are tangible. So what we really think about is, okay, if I'm going to be trying to value my company to raise investment, how do I look at the intangible asset side and how do I take care of them so I can actually make the best impression possible in people that I'm going to bring on board, and then other banks or financial institutions that will help me raise the funds. If we could go to the next slide, please. So again, as I said, the intangible assets are the most important assets of all successful companies in the present data-driven and knowledge-based economy. They're really value generators for all companies. Another interesting fact that I wanted to point out here is 52% of all enterprise value for all worldwide PLCs are attributed to intangible assets. Now, when you look at innovative, fintech, brand-led companies, this could be up to 90%. So it's critical, again, to value these. If we go to the next one. Now, why do we actually want to actually look at this? Well, I've been stressing the importance of intangible assets, but the first thing is actually to realize what assets do you have. So I think part of the course that we're going to be describing as well is how can one, disseminate the knowledge and the practice within the community or the organization or the institution of how do you actually pinpoint and identify an intangible asset and then take care of it, right? This is absolutely critical. So as an example, let's say if you realize that the dusty penny in your attic is a Rembrandt, you'll definitely treat it differently. So if you just discover it there. So similarly, if you know the true value of your intangible assets, you'll definitely take a lot more care in managing them, protecting them, reinforcing them, leveraging them. And this is absolutely critical when you think about resource allocation, budgeting, and also impact on decision making. So managing, buying, selling, and etc. The other key thing that I think the course is going to be trying to develop in everyone is the notion that in all business decisions, all finance decisions, they really come down to two elements here. The first is valuation, and the second is management. So valuation is really the starting point for all decision making and all management decisions. Once you value, let's say, two options, you will take the option that has the greater value. So if you do the valuation structure, if you know what the purpose is, you know what the assets you're valuing, you know what you're doing it for, and you do it in a proper way, at least to get an idea, there's different levels of extent of evaluation, data that you need to process in order to get to a value. But to start with the starting point, that will definitely help you make decisions and will make management a lot easier. And the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is valuation is really a negotiation tool for internally yourself or among your colleagues or within a negotiation of licensing or raising investment, right? So this is critical. I think it's important for everyone to appreciate and learn. So I'm really excited about this component. The next slide, please. And the one thing that I also want to point out is once we're looking at the investment from private equity, from banks, from other financial institutions as well, for high net worth individuals or from communities, right, from many members of the community, really what we want to try to do is get the maximum amount of return on investment. Now, this doesn't need to be monetary, of course, in essence, but it can be quality of life and then other attributes that are just as important in creating a very nice environment for everyone. But one thing that we wanted to try to do is use valuation that enables a structured monitoring and analysis of what is that return on investment. Yeah. So one thing that is critical as well to point out is IP protection allows your asset to begin to accrue value right away. So if you know which assets are most valuable and you take steps to protect that asset, then you start accruing value. You have a legal underpinning right to help you with that. And we'll be discussing that throughout the course as well. You'll also be knowing how to do a return through R&D, marketing, and protection. How do you actually get the return from these activities? And how do you actually ultimately use intangible assets to raise equity and debt financing? And again, it's really important to value it on a regular basis so that you can invest, you can make changes, you can adapt, but then that you can monitor the value of your IP assets to determine the annual return on investment of those assets. So you can really use valuation for so many different things, but one thing that I would submit to you is you can think about it using it as a single KPI to measure the impact of teams, for instance, or your strategic or operational plans and how to drive that forward. And you can actively look at this to actually forecast what are the best activities that you should deploy and incorporate in order to get the best return on investment. And then banks, private equity, all these players will be very happy that you've thought this through as well, and that discussion becomes very, very fluid. If we go to the next slide, please. So key aspects that we're going to be learning about valuation and assets and data in this data-driven economy as well. The first one that I really want to emphasize, and we'll be going into this in a lot of detail, but really boils down to the formula or the true definition, shall I say, of an asset, which is purely a sequence of cash flows. It can be positive, it can be negative, or it can be zero, but it's analyzing that sequence of cash flows and looking at the present value of those cash flows today and what that means in terms of an investment or an opportunity for a company. And we'll be looking at so many different things, interesting things, and what we really would like to try to do is learn about as much about the ecosystem as possible as well, see where are things that we can prioritize, things that are important to note, but we'll be looking at so many different aspects of valuation in terms of some of the most important would be, what is the asset type? Are we looking at patents, software, tech assets, trade secrets? Are we looking at brand assets? Are we looking at trademarks? The other thing is like making sure you have ownership of the asset, who has ownership, also who has control of the asset. Are there people that are sharing control? How's the structure of companies? How is that all set? Lifetimes of the assets and all sorts of things that pin down the value of an asset, the protection, the enforceability, the monitoring, preventing of, let's say, software piracy or value erosion, things like that, and the risks of regulation, right? And more importantly as well, how do you emphasize, especially in the early stage, startup companies, SMEs as well, management teams and workforce, and how company risk can be evaluated there. Next slide, please. So with this, what we're really trying to do with Marcus, Lily Claire, Kayanne, Kayla, and everyone else that's involved in this project as well as build through a process of research and capacity building an enhanced framework of IP monetization, right? That really can be leveraged in Jamaica. So the first step is really to understand the Jamaican IP ecosystem, meet the key players and develop the work plan, and starting the draft valuation guidelines, which will be a very practical guidelines that will help people to structure their operations and also valuation work. So the course will involve developing of these guidelines, but importantly as well, we're holding 4 workshops. There's 2 workshops that are going to be 2 training introductory workshops, and we are currently receiving expression of interest for the workshops. So if you're interested, please get in touch. We will be sending out a questionnaire out shortly as well. The submission deadline for the questionnaire, if you're interested in attending this course, is the 7th of May, so next Friday. So please express interest. This is absolutely open to everyone. We're not capping to the number of participants, so we want to get as many people involved as possible. And please, get involved and tell your colleagues and friends. We'd be very, very happy to work with you. And what we're going to really try to do in this course is have it a very practical course where we have practical examples that we can try to look into of the ecosystem itself. And our first workshop will kick off on the 31st of May. So again, it's a great pleasure to introduce this in today's talk. And this will be followed on by 2 other training workshops to train valuation specialists. Now, these are people that really want to specialize in valuation, drive the Jamaican IP evaluation ecosystem forward, be the specialists and experts in those areas, and finally develop the practical valuation guidelines as part of this entire program. Now, this is just a starting point. I think it's a starting point, and I think we're always going to be here, I think, to try to exchange ideas. I think it's just, as I said, we really want to make it a very communicative and community, and to exchange ideas and best practices. And I'm really looking forward to working with a lot of you and meeting many of you as well. And thanks very much for the opportunity to speak here. And I'll turn it back to Lily Claire. Thanks very much.
Oops. Thank you so much, Fernando. That was excellent. And really, thank you. It was simplified, easy to understand. And I hope that several persons take up the offer to attend the workshops. We're going to share and make available the questionnaire that you referred to earlier, so that persons can indicate their willingness to join and participate in the workshop that is going to be held on the 31st of May. So we will make that questionnaire available. I'm going to invite Erica Smith now, who we had introduced earlier. Erica, can you indicate if you are there now?
Unmuted.
Okay, we're trying to share the questionnaire with you. Is this Erica's presentation? My apologies, we're having some difficulty uploading the questionnaire.
Hello,
but perhaps
my
while
name
we're
is
trying to
Dr.
upload
Erica
the questionnaire,
Smith.
Erica,
I'm the
yes,
founder
Erica,
of Intellect
could you
Management
unmute?
Services,
We're not hearing
Inc.,
you. You
a
need to
Barbadian
unmute your mic.
consultancy firm, which was founded in
We're not hearing.
2013. IMS focuses on intellectual property strategy and management, the creative industries, and business development. Over the years, IMS has worked for a number of regional and international clients, including the Caribbean Export Development Agency, the Caribbean Community Center for Climate. Hello, my name is Dr. Erica Smith. I'm the founder of Intellect Management Services, Inc., a Barbadian consultancy firm, which was founded in 2013. IMS focuses on intellectual property strategy and management, the creative industries, and business development. Over the years, IMS has worked for a number of regional and international clients, including the Caribbean Export Development Agency, the Caribbean Community Center for Climate Change, the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry, the World Intellectual Property Organization, and the CARICOM Secretariat. For this project, IMS has been contracted to provide consultancy services for intellectual property capacity building. This is a component of a larger project, support to the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office for strengthening the intellectual property ecosystem to increase innovation, competitiveness, and growth in Jamaica. Specifically, this component seeks to support and promote the use of the provisions in the Jamaica Security Interest in Personal Property Act 2013, or the SEPA, and the National Collateral Registry. Unfortunately, the provisions in this legislation by intellectual property rights holders are largely unused. It is understood that this situation is not only as a result of a lack of knowledge and understanding of IPRs, but also of the provisions of SEPA and the registry. The specific objective of this consultancy is to develop, through a process of research and capacity building, an enhanced framework for IP monetization, which can be leveraged by MSMEs. This work is being achieved through 1, the undertaking of background research, including the application of survey tools, interviews, and focus groups, to gain a better understanding of the level of awareness, the knowledge gaps in specific areas of interest and relevance. 2, we shall develop an action plan to ensure the dissemination and continuation of training. 3, development of an IP training toolkit to build knowledge among IP stakeholders about IP creation, registration, protection, and commercialization. 4, we shall host a number of capacity building workshops targeting different stakeholders. 5, we shall design, administer, and summarize the results of pre- and post-training questionnaires to IP stakeholders and business support organizations in order to gauge learning and training results. The project implementation is being overseen by Deputy Director and Legal Counsel of JIPO, Dr. Marcus Goffe. We anticipate and look forward to a positive stakeholder interaction, and you may contact us at info@i-managedintellect.com or by visiting our website www.i-managedintellect.com. We look forward to working with you and making this project a success. Thank you.
Muted.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks so much for that presentation. We appreciate it and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Okay, to close out this part of the program, because once this part is concluded, we're going to segue into Marcus, as Erica just mentioned. He is the coordinator from our office here. We're going to segue into a more detailed overview and look at the project. And we'll also at that time open up for questions from the participants. And I noticed that the list of attendees has been growing. So for those of you who have just joined us, we've actually had expressions of greetings and welcomes from the Inter-American Development Bank. We had Kayla Grant, we had Daniel Best from the Caribbean Development Bank, we had our own Dr. Marcus Goffe, Deputy Director, Legal Counsel, who made a presentation, gave an overview of the project. The speaker who just spoke was Dr. Erica Smith out of Barbados. She gave an overview of component 1, and prior to her presentation, we had an extensive overview of component 2 of the project by Dr. Fernando da Cruz Vasconcellos. Now, to conclude the overview of the project and to look at component 3 of the project, it is my pleasure to give a brief introduction to Dr. Marek Dubovec. Dr. Dubovec is NatLaw's Executive Director. He is an internationally recognized expert on asset-based lending and access to credit. He has worked in over 25 countries in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, drafting laws and regulations on several transactions and related areas, such as factoring and warehouse receipts. He has also worked on the implementation of various technological infrastructures, such as collateral registries and platforms for the trading of digital assets. Dr. Dubovec holds several advisory and representative roles at standard-setting United Nations agencies. A member of the American Law Institute, he was appointed to the U.S. Uniform Law Commission's Committee on the Uniform Commercial Code and Emerging Technologies, which is responsible for reviewing and proposing changes to the Uniform Commercial Code to provide for the impact of new technologies on U.S. commercial practices. Dr. Dubovec was a recipient of the 2016 Special Recognition Award from the Secured Finance Network, that's the leading commercial finance industry group, for his work on credit market infrastructure related reforms. He is a professor of practice at the University of Arizona College of Law, where he teaches secure transactions and international commercial transactions. He holds a PhD in law from the University of Arizona. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Marek Dubovec, who will be our final speaker and give an overview of component 3 of the project. Over to you.
Thank you very much, dear Claire. It's a pleasure to be here among such a distinguished group of participants and speakers, and I hope to live up to the standards that Erica and Fernando set as you call them, very straightforward and clear. So I'll hope to do the same in my presentation. First of all, I wanted to also acknowledge your amazing and Marcus's ability to pronounce foreign names. It's in my years of working in these reforms in foreign markets, it's I hardly come across a person who can properly pronounce my and our founders' last name. So congratulations to you on that too.
Thank you so much.
So briefly about my institution and how our experience is expected to contribute to the project itself. We, first of all, set international standards as has been mentioned, working at, as you mentioned, Claire, at various United Nations bodies that develop guidance in the form of international treaties and model laws for commercial transactions, and particularly access to credit, one of which was a 2010 instrument on IP financing developed by the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. One of our team members is an Italian professor currently teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, and he's one of the key architects of that document. In addition, we also implement a lot of these standards, working on reforms in the region, but also around the world, as was just mentioned. We have done a lot of reforms in Latin America as well as the Caribbean, and hope to continue this work in Jamaica. And finally, we also do a lot of implementation. Interestingly, Mr. Best mentioned that Jamaica scores very highly in the World Bank Doing Business report on access to credit. We have worked, for instance, in Colombia, that is currently ranked #2, but both of these economies face the same challenge. Yes, they have excellent legal frameworks that comply with international standards, but SMEs do not benefit as much as we have hoped, as there is a lot to be done in these reform projects to actually translate how good these laws have been set up into actual practice. Next slide, please. Here, we just wanted to acknowledge on behalf of the Kozolchyk National Law Center team, the partnerships that formed this project, both Compete Caribbean as well as the Inter-American Development Bank and the other sponsors that provide support to this project, as well as the projects in 13 Caribbean economies. And last but not least, JIPO, that is our primary partner in implementing this project to facilitate access to credit for Jamaican SMEs using their intellectual property as collateral. So with that brief background, I wanted to explain briefly what our project entails. Next slide, please. What we set out to do initially is to provide some benchmarking of various intellectual property products to see which of those products have been successful, which of those products have not been successful, examining their individual structures, identifying the legal and regulatory components that facilitate their implementation or that pose some kind of a roadblock to their implementation. So we identified several credit structures where IP assets are used as collateral, ranging from very simple transactions that SMEs are expected to benefit from directly, whether they use an IP as a standalone collateral in a transaction where just the IP provides the relevant security to the lender, which is important in a number of SME business models, such as in publishing and music. The second type of transaction which we would consider for piloting is a transaction that covers a package of rights, which include IP, but typically they are bundled with some other components of a business, such as Fernando was explaining earlier, the relevant components, intangible and tangible components of the business that overall constitute a package that is used as collateral for a loan, gradually transitioning into more sophisticated transactions that, for instance, entail securitization of various types of payment rights that relate to intellectual property, such as music royalties. I'm sure most of you are familiar with many of those structures. The most well-known would be the Bowie bonds, where David Bowie transferred his rights to collect royalties into a trust that issued some bonds, and there are other less known structures, but equally important. So we'll be looking at those structures and whether this market today is capable of producing those structures, but also building these structures for tomorrow, so that we don't leave Jamaica with just a couple of simple structures that may be used by the Jamaican SMEs today, but thinking ahead, what is it that they might need 5, 7, 10 years from now as the market grows? And the final type of transaction that we'll be looking at more deeply are a lot of fintech applications. More generally, several speakers mentioned digital economy. So the impact of technology in these markets and in these economies has grown significantly. All kinds of platforms and exchanges emerged that are already dedicated to the trading of intellectual property rights, such as, for instance, a royalty exchange. And there are a lot of blockchain-based applications that in some way utilize intellectual property rights, such as MakerDAO, which is a decentralized finance application that just yesterday announced a first transaction where they use IP rights as collateral for some of their loans that have been issued through this decentralized application. What we consider as an important element for the Jamaican SMEs to grow and to be able to leverage their IP are some structures that support this market-based financing. We have often seen in other reforms and projects that often public support is provided to give some confidence to the parties to these transactions, especially lenders, and to offload some of their credit risk. For instance, public guarantee schemes have been set up in many countries in the world. Korea might be the most well-known example for IP, to guarantee the repayment of a loan that is secured with IP, so that the banks, while they gain some experience and expertise in this type of financing, which is crucial, capacity building component is very crucial, they get this confidence that if something goes wrong in the deal itself, they will be able to reduce their losses. Next, please. In doing so, we will be relying on a number of underlying legal and regulatory components. So we will be looking at intellectual property laws. There are at least 9 Jamaican intellectual property laws that have been recently enacted that are relevant to this project. There is the 2013 Secure Transactions Law, which scores very highly in the Doing Business report, as I just mentioned. And there are a number of regulations that apply depending on the type of credit structure that will be deployed and recommended by us, as Fernando made very clear in his presentation, valuation is another very important element that plays a significant role in all of these related projects. For instance, for us, if a lender is unable to value the IP, it is unable to determine how much to loan against that IP, as a result of which the loan might not even happen. A typical lender is also most likely concerned about how much it will recover in insolvency. What if my borrower goes bankrupt? Well, that always obviously depends on how the insolvency law and insolvency trustee values the collateral and the secured claim. So those components are intertwined, and they are also intertwined with regulation, which may impose certain transactional costs or make IP financing a less attractive option to financial institutions as compared to some other financing opportunities. For instance, in many countries, including in Jamaica, IP is not eligible, what the regulation prudential regulation calls eligible collateral. In other words, the loan needs to be reserved as if it was completely unsecured. So the collateral value of IP is not taken into account. So we'll be reviewing all of these elements, legal and regulatory elements, that will underpin these IP financing structures. Finally, next slide, about some of the steps that will be taken. Our project started a few weeks ago. We have already engaged in some benchmarking exercise that led to the identification of these credit product structures as well as their diversity. That led us to examine the underlying Jamaican laws and regulations. We are in the process of gathering some data. We're collaborating with Marcus's office, getting some data on the number of registrations in his office, as well as from the collateral registry, so that we are able to get a better picture of what is happening currently in the market. We also have some initial calls scheduled with Fernando and his group to ensure better coordination between the two projects, given how intertwined they are. But we all understand that this is a long-term project, which initially will focus on identifying and analyzing the local market, local practices, so that whatever credit products we ultimately identify as being suitable for the Jamaican economy are in fact suitable for today and could be readily implemented. So with that, really clear, I thank you all for the opportunity to provide a description of our project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that excellent overview, and really to highlight the critical areas and the fact that we have some of the components in place, but we're still a far way off, and there's a lot of work to be done. And I thank you for really embracing the project and to recognize that, you know, we're different. Each country has to be looked at as its own, and I really appreciate that. And I think this augurs well for the execution of the project in Jamaica. So I'd like to thank everyone who presented earlier, and you're not released, because we're now going to segue into the panel discussion. And the panel discussion is going to be chaired by our very own Dr. Marcus Goffe, and will include the project manager for the project, which is Kayanne. Fernando will also be joining us, and we will welcome at that time from the Bank of Jamaica, Miss Melanie Williams, and from the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Rochelle, who I know, and Chris Brown from the Development Bank of Jamaica, and yourself, Marek, you will also be joining us in this panel discussion. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this part of the program. And now I'm going to segue to the Deputy Director, Legal Counsel of JIPO, Marcus, who will moderate the panel discussion. So thanks, everybody. Marcus, over to you.
Thanks so much, Peter. And thanks to everyone who has spoken so far. I think it's been very useful, to have everybody share their perspectives and their input. I think it's the first time we're actually coming together as different consultant teams and JIPO, IDB, CDB, so we're grateful for that as well. Morning, Kayanne. Nice to see you. Okay, so yes, we're going to have a discussion now because, of course, what we want to do here is to highlight the projects, how it fits into the current situation, and how through the project we hope to advance the current situation to one that is more conducive, right, to MSME finance. We have with us, in addition to who you've heard from before as the project consultants, Ms. Kayanne Anderson, attorney at law, who is the project manager on the project, working with JIPO closely to interweave and ensure coherency in the several components of the project to all the agreed outcomes. Of course, we are also going to be joined on the panel by Ms. Melanie Williams, who is our Financial Inclusion Secretariat Coordinator at the Bank of Jamaica, one of our key stakeholders, of course, in this process as we provide creative financial solutions to the current situation. And we also will be joined, as was said by Lady Claire, Mr. Christopher Brown, General Manager of the Strategic Services Division in the Development Bank of Jamaica. Also a key partner in terms of what we are hoping to accomplish with the project. Right. So we're looking forward to having a very interactive discussion, really. Right, we have Ms. Rochelle Cameron too, right, as Little mentioned, attorney at law and representative of the private sector organization of Jamaica, the PSOJ. I hope you remember better now, right? So welcome, Rochelle. She's from the Access to Finance Facilitation panel of the private sector organization of Jamaica. Of course, for this project to really have its intended outcomes, right, we would need to be able to have, again, a public-private consensus around these issues to be able to see how best we can implement them, right? And so through the project, we will be, of course, involving key government ministries and agencies and departments, of course, private sector, the creative industries, and broadly, as Fernando mentioned, patents, designs, copyright, trade secrets, trademarks, etc. And of course, the financial institutions, both the major and microfinancial institutions as well, are quite key. And so we are glad that we can be joined then by our distinguished panel. Good morning, Rochelle. Nice to see you.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, so Chris, I saw a message from Chris. I think Chris may not be able to show his camera, but I don't know if we can hear you, Chris. If at least we can hear you, that would be the next best.
I think, Chris, maybe you can turn on the camera. It's on the top of the screen other than by our names on the left. So that might help.
I think Chris is by the pool and he doesn't want all of us to feel badly. So
I wish. Not at all. Morning, everyone. No, I think it was working earlier. Now it's just saying I'm unable to share. I'm still playing around with it to see if I can fix it.
All right, you get rid of this time.
Right, and Miss Melanie Williams, is Melanie there with us? Good morning, Melanie. I'm not seeing Melanie. I know I spoke to her.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm trying to open my camera.
Okay, right. So there's a camera icon in the center.
I'm hitting that, but it won't let me on. It won't let me make myself available. Let me put it like that.
That's the same thing for me to Melanie.
I don't know if there's any way that can be resolved, so that we can.
I don't think it can be resolved from this side. I'm not sure, but I could see. So just hope to see what's possible behind the scenes, But I mean, if not, at least we're glad to have you here.
Share screens with someone. Can we up Melanie and Chris Brown? No, to show them. Can we force their videos? Oh, all right, cool. Marcus, we can't force their videos.
Right.
We can't. They have to do it themselves, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. Well, at least we have the voices and the presence and the expertise, nonetheless, right? So, welcome everyone. Yeah. So we've heard already from Fernando and we've heard from Marek, right? So, right. What I'll just do then is ask Kayanne just to give again her role in the project, how she sees it tying up nicely, in what's currently the situation and where we hope to go through the project. So Kayanne, I'll hear from you just as again your own view and perspective.
Thank you, Marcus, and welcome to everyone. It's good to see good friends and folk here today. This, of course, is a seminal project for Jamaica, for the region, and for many of us who have been sludging in the intellectual property land form for a while, right? Because what it does present is an opportunity to answer some of the questions that have long been asked, especially by the small and medium-sized enterprises that flock our landscape in terms of private sector in the region. And the answers, I'm very encouraged by the findings, the new doing business findings about the improvements in our ranking, Jamaica's ranking for access to credit, and also by the opportunities that are presented by this project to start to bridge some of these gaps that do exist in the IP ecosystem in Jamaica and spread the message along or spread the success of the project to the Caribbean and to our partners globally. This issue of intellectual property, monetization, commercialization, collateralization, all of these questions have long been asked, especially because we know in Jamaica, many of our creators, many of the persons who are business startups, who have businesses and who do interface with the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, who are members as well of the private sector organization of Jamaica, who go to the banks, wishing for collateral to help to build their businesses, are often faced with the hurdles which Melanie is going to describe and share with us some of the ways that the BOJ Financial Inclusion Secretariat are addressing. So the project comes at a time when a lot of the players, the key players, in fact, all the key players are actually, navigating these opportunities. And I call them opportunities. And the opportunities, especially that have been presented by the last 12 months of no more sun, sea, sand, but getting down to the real deal. And so why I believe it is so important for us to look at this issue and to continue to ask you to engage with us and, look out for emails, look out for messages from myself and Marcos to invite Jamaicans to subscribe to the project, to support the project. We invite you, Rochelle, to help us to champion this with your colleagues as well. And we know the sustainability of the project is of key importance for us. So I won't go into, components and all of that because it's been ably addressed by the parties, the consultants. So you've seen we have an excellent team of consultants and our project management team works together very well. We are very closely working together to really improve not just improve on the strong legal framework that does exist in Jamaica in relation to intellectual property rights protection. But when we look at how to transform rights into assets, this is where the issues keep arising, and we want to answer these and answer the opportunity. Often when we have a lot of training courses, in intellectual property, with building awareness, especially with SMEs, the question of access to finance continues to come up. And this project is JIPO's way of finally trying, with the help of the Inter-American Development Bank, Compete Caribbean's program, as well as the Caribbean Development Bank and our partners there. We want to answer the question. And this is important for the JIPO. I can't emphasize it, how important it is, because it's time for us to prove the case, so to speak. So this puts Marek on and his team under tremendous, exciting pressure, because that pilot to see, to show, you know, this is the proof that this can be done. It's not easy. We're not promising, you know, success, but what we do promise is that we will engage with the issues, and we at the project management side will be hounding your doors and, you know, bombarding our local stakeholders to support us in proving this case. So importantly, I want to focus on just some other issues in terms of the sustainability, as well as to inform and just share. You know, the partners, the key partners, the Inter-American Development Bank, the CDB, and the JIPO. The consultants, Intellect Management Services, represented earlier by Dr. Eric Smith, Valuation Consulting, represented by Fernando, and Kozolchyk. I call them NatLaw. I'm not as able as Lily Claire and Marcos, so I say NatLaw, that's Marek's team. And we also have a team of consultants who are helping the JIPO to digitize its database. We've done considerable work so far in terms of the trademark database, and they're tackling the patents database during this period. This project should last for the next 8 months, and so we will be interacting with you over the next 8 months intensely. The project is also overseen by some key partners we call an advisory committee or a project steering committee, represented by the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, the Ministry of Finance and Public Service, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the Bank of Jamaica, the Development Bank of Jamaica, the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, as well as the Jamaica Bankers Association, the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, the Small Business Association of Jamaica, and the Economic Policy Oversight Committee, EPOC, we call them, together with the funding partners who I've mentioned before. In terms of sustainability, though, we want to ensure that this project does not just peter out once the results from a project management standpoint are met. We want the conversation to continue. And I, want to tickle some of the panel, to really help us to look at how to address issues such as the Iep valuation gap that does exist. Many businesses are core IP businesses in Jamaica. IP is at the core of many businesses. But as Fernando mentioned, in many cases, it's the Rembrandt in the attic, or in Jamaican parlance, it's really, the Bob Marley under the mattress. So for our foreign visitors, our foreign participants, we tend in Jamaica to save our valuables. It's traditional. Our valuables are kept under the mattress. So in this case, we want to, lift up the mattress, look under it, air it out a little, get rid of the cobweb, and see how we can find the value, understand the value, appreciate the value. And it builds a lot of confidence, which is essential, of course, in commerce. So often when we speak with small and medium-sized businesses, once the issue of finance comes up, the relationship with money, trying to get credit or even to engage for equity or to get a loan or even to go to your family to borrow, lend me 500,000 to just start this business. There is so much fear attached to it. And often the fear can be countered by understanding the value of what you have. So often you're going in with a blank slate. You just have this idea and you think it's a good vibe. Boy, this thing going to win. and you just don't know what is this thing that you have in front of you. Is this bankable? Is this marketable? Is this something that is being done so much that the opportunity is really, limited? And so even when you look at the digitization of the database, the ability to search a database online, and Marcus, don't worry, I'm not going to start teaching, but the ability to search a database online is key in founding a business, because you are wide open. It opens the portal for you to see what's being done. So often people will start a business not understanding what the competitive landscape looks like. What does this look like outside of Jamaica? What does this look like outside of Prairie? What does this look like outside of, Clarendon? And so being able to access the information online quickly without going into JIPO, paying the $500 fee, doing a search of the registers. And Marcus, you can show the participants one of the registers, having that ability to search online is so important as a part of business. And so these kinds of improvements that the project is aiming at ensuring for small and medium-sized enterprises are some of the things that are key to addressing the challenges and the gaps and showing the opportunities through this project. And Chris will also speak with us from the DBJ standpoint and the Iep program about some of the support that is offered by the Development Bank, and the way the Iep program will also offer tech transfer support and patenting and IP enforcement support. So we are just starting off, and I will just start off and then pass the baton. Does this look like a baton? Yeah, it's the AC remote, but it will work. So I'll just pass the baton now to Melanie to speak a little more, or if I go back to Marcus, to speak a little more about how, how is the financial regulatory, how is the central bank, how is the financial inclusion work that is being done through the Bank of Jamaica? How is that, looking at the opportunity presented by intellectual property and the commercial transactions that are possible through transforming intellectual property into assets? And then we would, ask Rochelle as well to give us just, put our fingers on the pulse of what is happening in the private sector and throw back to us as well what your needs are in terms of this issue, so that we can also continue the conversation with you outside of this forum. So I thank you. I look forward to working with all of you. I'm the one who carries the basket with all the water, so feel free to contact me, project manager at jipo.gov.jm by email, or through the JIPO's numbers, 876-946-1600. If you have any questions, and don't bother Marcus, I will bother him, but you can bother me. I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kayanne. Thank you so much. Yes, lovely introduction, right? Very a project manager, so thanks for your support. I look forward to achieving the objectives, through our collective efforts. So you want to pass the button up then to Mel? Yeah, you can pass the button up to Mel, and there you go. All right, collect it there. So I like that. All right. So we're here from Miss Melanie Williams. Miss Williams is an attorney at law of over 20 years experience. She currently works as a financial inclusion secretariat coordinator in the Bank of Jamaica. So good morning, Melanie.
Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much, Marcus, for that kind introduction. I have a presentation. I'm going to try and share my screen. I was playing around with this earlier, and it will give me the option to select. Yes, exactly, the presentation. Please tell me if you can see it now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so good morning again. So in Bank of Jamaica, our work on financial inclusion really is focused on a number of key pillars to improving the landscape, the business environment for MSMEs, as well as giving opportunities to households to access products that are suitable for them. In the presentation that I'm going to make, naturally, of course, there's a disclaimer. the views which I express are mine and do not necessarily represent the views of BOJ, its board officers or employees. This is just standard legalese protection of our clients, if you will. So to set the context, when you look at what we see in terms of the loan portfolios of our deposit-taking institutions, and by deposit-taking institutions, we mean our commercial banks, our merchant banks, and our building societies. When you look at the line item for entertainment, you will notice that there is very little happening there. It's not a particularly attractive sector, it seems, for the DTIs to lend to. And why do I flag that? Because we don't have a separate line item that speaks specifically in terms of the services component of animation, for example, filmmaking and so on, where you see a lot of the use of IP. When you then go to the broader context of MSMEs, you see that MSMEs are in fact accessing capital through the equities market, through the Jamaica Stock Exchange. They're able to get that. But IP is also critical from the MSME perspective, because when you go to the junior stock market to list, in terms of having a proper evaluation of your IP, that influences naturally the opening price for your IPO in terms of your shares, what you're going to seek from the market in terms of purchasing. So what are some of the challenges that we have, become aware of in terms of MSMEs, and specifically MSMEs that rely heavily around an IP-centric business model? A major challenge when they interface with the DTIs is that they have challenges explaining their business model to the DTIs in clear and precise language. So we have two different worlds that are meeting. And it is very important for the MSMEs that are engaged in IP content generation, management, etc., to be able to explain their operations, their product, their clientele. They also need to have their records in order, which really speaks to the ability to project their growth and their ability to scale up. We also find the lack of formality in terms of the absence of a business name registration, limited tax compliance. They may be in the informal economy, in the gray economy, meeting know your employee requirements, and relatively limited use of technology can also negatively impact that contract negotiation or interface, if you will, with the financial sector. This is further compounded by low levels of financial literacy, which limit their ability to negotiate successfully. When you look at the financial institution side, their perspective is that if they want to conduct a proper credit risk assessment, they need to understand the sector in which your business is operating. They need to understand the business model, your assets, which is where the IP falls, and how your IP rights can be used as collateral should you be seeking a loan, for example. They also need to understand the value of your IP rights and how they can realize that value in the event there's a default on the loan. They want to, of course, understand your ability to service loans and the source of your capital. Now, the lack of information on the credit profile of an MSME, which is a micro, small, or medium-sized enterprise seeking to engage with the financial institution, means that it is very difficult for the financial institution to have see-through sight of exactly what is happening in terms of your day-to-day business activities. For example, how do you engage with your customers? How do you relate to them? How do you demonstrate you, in fact, own your IP? Have you taken that extra step of registration? Are you tax compliant? Because, of course, financial institutions function in a broader way within a highly regulated sector, and they have international relationships as well, depending on the nature of the financial institution, if it is locally owned or if it is part of a larger group. So how do we resolve these challenges from the perspective of the MSME? First of all, we find within Bank of Jamaica, when we went out before COVID, we had actually gone across the island 6 parishes, so not all of it, but we were able to interface with quite a few MSMEs. And we found that those that were engaged in the creative industries, and you see it even in the FinStab reports, there sometimes is a disconnect between understanding that you are not only the developer of intellectual property content and the manager of that, but you're also an entrepreneur. You have to see yourself as a business person first and foremost. And feel free to look at yourself objectively and say, what can we do to make ourselves more attractive to the capital markets or more attractive to a provider of debt capital? How can we do that? How can we meet the financial institution halfway or meet our ultimate investor halfway? Remember, therefore, that this is business. You're a business person, you're engaged in business. they are also engaged in business. So there's going to be a level of formality, and the more formal your business, the greater your negotiating power. And most importantly, know your worth, which means you have to protect your IP. This is a new digital world. There are new opportunities to utilize your IT for revenue streams. There's also new opportunities for somebody to take advantage of whatever IP you put out there if you don't protect it. So you absolutely have to register it. And it goes back to the earlier presentations we've heard with the reforms that are happening with JIPO in terms of strengthening the legal framework around intellectual property ownership and management. So first step, your IP is your business. These are your assets. Please have written contracts, copyright registration, trademark registration, for example. What is your vision? How do you intend to differentiate your product or your service? How are you differentiating your service from that of a competitor? And recognize that your IP is your cash cow, it's your revenue. The revenue that can be earned from endorsements, from royalties. You want to document that, because the more you document your revenue streams and you document your typical cycle in terms of engaging with your clientele, your end user, how you're producing the content, time frame to actually receive payment, that enables a financial institution to understand your business better. It's really coming to a place where you speak the same language. And if you therefore see your IP as your asset and a monetization of the asset, you can better negotiate with that financial institution. So what are we trying to achieve? BOJ, in partnership with the work of the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, we're trying to make sure we create the enabling environment for business. And of course, we're supported by this, by JIPO and a number of other agencies that work with MIC, as well as with our other major partner, the Ministry of Finance and Public Service. So data is critical. And data not only from a supply side perspective, but data from a demand side perspective. And I'm going to start to pass the baton to Rochelle, because PSOJ has been really instrumental in terms of gathering data that measures the MSMEs engagement, what they go through when they engage with a financial institution, everything from account opening processes, how do they find the turnaround time to get access to the financial services they need? What are the pain points? So PSOJ has been really strategic in that regard. And we also in BOJ are looking to partner with MIC to develop an MSME demand side survey that we anticipate would be able to be administered through, for example, Small Business Association of Jamaica, through MSME Alliance and other entities like that, to really understand what's happening to MSMEs, especially those engaged in IP content development and creation. Enabling laws, you've heard, that was addressed, but it's very important for a micro or small or medium-sized business engaged in this space, because services represents such a large portion of our economy. You have to know the laws that protect you, and you have to use them. You have to really take the extra step of protecting your image, your brand. There was a great presentation on COVID Cast yesterday, which spoke to how you represent your brand across all platforms. Again, Rochelle, I'm just nudging Rochelle because I know she's going to take it away, but I just want to indicate that BOJ is listening to what the private sector is saying. Financial literacy. We need targeted financial literacy content for IP content creators and their service providers. That means their managers, their lawyers, and even in some cases their accountants. Because the ones who are engaged in more of the artistic side of business may delegate and leave a lot of the business process management work to professionals. But here's a tidbit from a lawyer. You need to watch your providers, you need to watch your lawyers, you need to watch your managers, you need to know what they're doing, which means you need to be sufficiently financially literate to understand what's happening with your costs, your revenue, your overheads, etc. Are you in fact being protected? So don't just hand it over and forget about it. You need to be financially literate in terms of understanding what are the key industry terms, what are the key nuances for you as a business. And now we come to valuation and the secondary markets for realization of the valuation of IP. The processes around IP valuation must be transparent. In other words, the financial institution must understand how you arrived at that particular value. You have to be thorough. It's going to be informed by the types of markets that exist. It's going to be informed by what's happening globally. And it's very important that you take those additional steps. We, of course, are familiar with, let's just keep it real. the Jamaican music industry, for example, is groundbreaking. Our impact is global. And we create so many great lyrics, riffs, rhythms that sometimes can be captured by an artist in another space. And an artist out here has to take the necessary steps to protect his or her intellectual property. That can only happen when you've taken the first steps to make yourself literate, when you have a sense of how do you enforce your rights, you have the proper service providers on your side, and you have a sense of what it's worth. Because enforcement and protection of your ownership rights requires money. So you need to understand what's at stake. So you need the proper evaluation to happen. And so just segueing now in terms of the MSME finance data points, these are some of the data points that we are seeking to really deep dive into. How many MSMEs are actually able to access private sector credit disaggregated by the sector? We get the first part already. We see private sector credit as represented by deposit-taking institutions, but there are many other financial institutions that can provide credit. Microfinance institutions, for example, credit unions, other entities, securities deals. So we need to understand what you're looking at in terms of the entirety of private sector credit, and we need to understand the segmentation so that we can really now come to the creative industries and look at that. And the creative industry is broken down further. Year on year, new business name registration processes. Now, the Companies Office has invested greatly in terms of reforming the whole process of registering your name and therefore obtaining a TRN, a tax registration number, quickly. It is actually online. It's easy to use. It's very important that you utilize the digital space. Jamaica is moving to a digital economy, and that has to be embraced by all aspects of what we do in business. Because as Chris will mention, the more we embrace the digital world, the more we reside there, the better your opportunity as an entrepreneur to access additional benefits, voucher programs, etc. Also, you want to take steps to make sure that you enforce your rights, but you also register. If you're using any intellectual property as collateral, you want to take the step of registering that with a national security interest, personal property, and registry. And again, we want that data point disaggregated by the category, by the industry. And of course, we're looking broadly at the number of MSMEs. This is a demand side question. The number of MSMEs that are actually taking the step to protect their IP rights. So this is part of the ongoing work. Bank of Jamaica is really pushing forward strongly on financial literacy. And I'm pleased to say that I have a short video here that I'd like to play just a clip of. But we have used one of our own screenshot, one of our own providers or animators, critical to creating content that is suitable for the Jamaican audience. And we had all the formality in place, contract negotiation, the concept development, storyboards, everything, ownership of all of that had to be ironed out and determined and protected. Because both the provider, the animator has to be protected, as well as us, VOJ, who intend to use the content. In terms of policy development, that is ongoing, and Marcus will speak more to the specific project that JIPO is looking at. This has been a long time coming. Work actually started around this quite some time ago, and we're pleased to see that it's coming to fruition. The work that's been done on the policy development side, of course, is informed by work done by the Development Bank of Jamaica, PSOJ, by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, and MIC, and BOJ supports that. Survey development, and of course, our financial inclusion resources. And these are a number of our videos here that we are pushing towards creating specific content. And this is the program I was speaking about, Real Talk. Really making financial literacy concepts in the Jamaican language so people understand. We sometimes suffer from a disconnect in that the language that we use as central bankers, or even more broadly, the language that is used by the financial industry, is very difficult for the average Jamaican to understand. The use of heavy jargon in our day-to-day conversation creates a mysticism that clouds the basic concepts, that we need to remove that and make it simple and straightforward. So that's what we're seeking to do. And of course, if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me. And you can reach me via email at melanie.williams@boj.org.jm. Of course, Marcus has all of my contact details. Marcus, with your permission, if I could just share the video. I just wanted to broadcast what one of our local animators was actually able to do. I think I may have to stop screen sharing and start again. So let me go back. see if it will go to the window. No, unfortunately, it's not pulling up. Let's see if it selects it up. Okay. Share.
Okay.
Tell me if you're seeing this. This is the first that we did.
Yes, yes.
And this is the financial literacy series launched in December using a local animator.
Right, okay.
I think you need to share your audio, Mel.
Okay, let me see if I can. My audio is on. Still not hearing?
Not hearing or seeing anything, no.
Oh, okay, all right, let me stop.
Maybe what you could do is share the link in the chat with all the attendees, and then we could have persons interact and watch it there. But I think that's really a great move, I would say, Melanie. For the BOJ to simplify and break down some of these financial concepts, which as you say, just in your thoughts of them sometimes, right? Scares people.
And we have the local talent here to do it. That's the point I really wanted to make. That we have the filmmakers here, so we can use our local talent and they make messages that we as Jamaican people understand. So that really was what I was trying to share with you. So apologies.
No, man, that's good, man. I think we're perfectly aligned with with that, and that's really why I think we're on the same page with this project and why we're going to go places with it. So thanks very much, Melanie. Thanks for that detail, and I'm glad to know that the BOJ is really doing so much, to again break down and to include all. All right, so you can pass the button to Rochelle now, right?
Rochelle.
Yes, Rochelle, another one of our legal luminaries here in Jamaica, former Caribbean Vice President of Legal and Regulatory for Cable and Wireless Communications. She's currently the founder and the CEO of Prescient Consulting Services Limited, and she's here this morning representing the Access to Finance Facilitation Panel of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. So pleased to have you here, Rochelle.
Thank you very much, Marcus. It's just about moving into afternoon, so it's a good morning, good afternoon time. Great to see familiar faces. Hi, Kayanne, haven't seen you in a while. Christopher, Melanie, and of course, Marcus, and great to meet you, Fernando and Marek. Melanie, excellent presentation. Not much more for me to say after that presentation. Where I will focus my conversation, though, is on the language of the literacy. So what we have been finding from the PSOJ is that we will have these various consultations and projects towards initiatives that will facilitate the growth of businesses. But we are not necessarily bringing the businesses along on the project timeline. So the conversations are had, I like to say, with the experts. So we have the expert conversations with the lawyers, with the accountants, with the various consultants and the project managers. But we're not necessarily translating this to the persons who we actually need to be a part of this ecosystem. So the ecosystem tends to be very focused at a high level rather than drilling down to the persons who will actually be utilizing the facilities. So we've been doing quite a bit of work on financial literacy, because even as we look at this concept of MSMEs accessing finance, to access finance requires that you not just have a business that you're running at your house and sometimes you do some receipts, other times you don't. to actually go to the bank is going to require particular documents for you to open the account. And we've been working with the banks for simplified due diligence. We've seen movement on that for individual accounts, but not enough movement for the opening of business accounts. So even the requirements for financial statements, etc. Now, the average MSME we do have to face is not necessarily financially literate in the numbers for the business. And this is really something that we have to focus on as a country. One of the things we've been seeing, and I know the BOJ is doing a lot of work on financial literacy, is the conversation cannot start when you get into adulthood. You can pick it up in adulthood, but this conversation has to be a part of the curriculum in every school. So rather than breaking students down into the science students and the business students, we need to start, everybody's a potential business student. So we start framing the mind around numbers, but we start segregating ourselves from very early who reads, who like numbers, and who like science. And at the end of the day, and what COVID has shown us is that in this current virtual space, in this space of second stream of income, we are seeing more and more businesses emerge. And some of them are excellent business ideas that are not able to move successfully from concept into execution, into actual revenue generation, because this education is not there. So a big part of what we're doing at the PSOJ is breaking down this complex languaging of financial literacy, of the laws that support the various registration. Because I'm a lawyer and sometimes I don't understand what the law says. So I'm saying when you are already a layperson, trying to get your business up and running, and you hear there's all of this supporting legislation. The other day I had a conversation with somebody, and in the middle of it, they said, stop a second, what is legislation? So we think that we are having the same conversation that we're not. We're having a conversation with ourselves. So even talking about the enabling legislation, we have to break it down into simple language for persons to understand and provide the framework and the platform for the questions to be asked. So even as we're looking at Iep, and I'm very excited about this project, looking forward to it moving from project stage into full implementation, because that is another thing we've been looking at, that how do we ensure that projects move, because we have brilliant projects, we always have a commission in Jamaica, to actual execution and take up. And I know the BOJ is working on the metrics. We will also be following up from the private sector. But one of the things we have recognized, and the Minister of Finance and Planning did indicate in his budget debate speech, that there was a record number of businesses registered in 2020. Now, we have been working assiduously on formalization and encouraging businesses to formalize. But what COVID has done is that there are persons who may have lost their jobs that have now opened businesses, and to access certain grants and financing. And so more businesses are in fact registering. But we're really trying to gather the data rather than just the anecdotal evidence. But there's been an exponential increase. Now, this increase in formalization creates such a stage for us to be not just saying, you're formalized, you've gotten your TRN, then what? Are your business accounts in order? Do you have an accountant? Do you know the accountants that are available? Everybody thinks they're a lawyer, but there are actually some things that you're going to need a lawyer to do. When you're looking at your IP rights, and we're also doing a program on COVIDcast next week on IP rights, where we're trying to break down, when we talk about designs and patents and IP, a lot of times these things are flying over people's heads, So they actually are sitting on money makers that they should be registering. The concept of going to JIPO, they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, this is going to be a complicated process. They're going to ask me a lot of questions, and people are not formalizing. when we're looking at the kind of content that is being created online as a result of COVID, it is such a great opportunity to tap in, because what is happening is the content is being created, the content is not being copyrighted, there are no protections around it, the content is going global, and there are opportunities for us as a nation and for businesses to really be generating revenue so that we can be, rather than just a mass downloader, but also exporting our content. But even the content creation or YouTubers, they're actually not even thinking necessarily in that space, because we are not having that conversation in the early, what I like to call the early juggling. So it is very, very important that as we are looking at this broader picture, that we are constantly running a stream of conversation to ask, how do we translate this information in language that our business owners can understand? How do we show them what's in it for them? How do we show them the benefits of moving from just creating, and I mean, no one can create like a Jamaican, creating to actually formalizing to monetizing? And I think it's, you know, it's always, when you look at timing, I think this is the best time for us to be having the conversation, because people are now themselves creating more as a result of this pandemic. And what we now have to do is rein people in to say, what are you doing with this content? Even the concept of being able to use your IP as collateral, people are surprised at this. Most business owners we talk to, they're shocked that that could be done. You know why? Because we still have in our head that things that we create, music and so, are not real assets. They're not real assets that have a value. So we still see it as, you make a song, you write one little book, but we're not necessarily translating that into the value. And we have to, as this project moves along too, start being able to put the value of the assets in real terms, to educate people on existing with the precedents so that they understand as they're creating the value that is being created and the steps that need to be taken from the early stages as they create. And also, that it's not just a little business that you're running, that some of these businesses have the potential with the IP that's being created to go global and to access financing because they are real assets and valuable assets. So I will wrap up now, because, you know, I'll go on and on because I'm very passionate about this area. But the support of the private sector organization is definitely with this project. We have been doing work too on SIPA and the whole concept of reverse factoring. IP, even in the conversation on reverse factoring and using your collateral, you know, IP tends to be the one that is kind of way down on the list, because even the bankers themselves don't understand this languaging that we're talking about. So when Kayanne mentioned in the introduction that it's this global conversation, because we assume that the bankers know what IP, the bankers know what financial statements are. They're no IP. They themselves don't even understand how we value. So it's pulling the ecosystem together and starting from ground zero, from a space that we are all trying to understand something in this space, and bringing that language and that information together so that we have a seamless execution. But I think this is such a great time and great opportunity, and we can't let it pass. So we have to be working assiduously at it. So you have our support, Kayanne. You can call me anytime.
Yes, Rochelle, thank you so much for that. The passion is exuding, you know, so we love that, because this needs the private sector and all on board. And I mean, we fully agree with having to break down and to simplify, because again, you know, it's the micro sector, you know, that we see is the majority of MSMEs, and so we need to have them understand and fully utilizing what's available, you know. So thanks for that, Rochelle. All right, so the baton is passed to you, Chris. I'm glad you have the video working with us now. So Chris Brown is the General Manager of the Strategic Services Division in the Development Bank of Jamaica. As introduced or alluded to earlier by Kayanne, Chris and the DBJ have been doing a lot of interesting funding and creative types of financing for MSMEs. So Chris will share on some of what the DBJ has been doing and also on how we can fit into this project. So Chris, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Just checking that you are seeing the screen. Yes?
Yes, seeing the screen, yes.
All right, so again, as Marcus indicated, I'm from the Development Bank of Jamaica, and our primary mandate is to provide support to businesses, whether startups, micro, small, with different solutions. This topic of Iep valuation, using it to access capital, is one that we've been talking about for some time, and I'm very happy that this project is at the point that we're going to kick off, as in Marek and Fernando have outlined specific areas in the program that I think are critical for this particular mission. As a banker myself, I'm very interested in the asset-based lending approach, or those types of solutions that will be put forward. One thing I will put out there that we need to ensure we do is get the banks themselves to buy in somewhat to these solutions. There are many times we create possible structures, and then having them implemented is really the bigger hurdle, right? We talk about the collateral registry, and Melanie would be familiar with the bank's initial resistance to use it. We have to come back around with them again, and at the end of the day, we want whatever is created to be utilized so that financing can flow and the ecosystem can be developed. So yeah, definitely one thing I'll just point out. So quickly, I'm really going to, and Kayla made mention of it earlier about a project being financed by the IDB, which is our Boosting Innovation, Growth and Entrepreneurship Ecosystems project, or Big E. And it's really geared at providing support to the entire entrepreneurship ecosystem. So it's looking at businesses at different stages of the business life cycle. So starting with your startups, those who are scaling, and then your more established firms. Well, in the entire project, there are these three main elements that I just want to touch on. So the first is we will be providing financial support through grants or capacity building for our micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to do business or do business in a more innovative way. As I mentioned, this ranges from supporting businesses at the idea stage all the way up to those who have established businesses and are in the mode to really try and pivot so that they can scale and grow their businesses. And then another type of financial support, which we are, as the bank has been promoting, is the use of equity financing for firms. In Jamaica, accessing equity financing has been kind of it's like a sleeping giant, right? Like, many people are afraid of it because they're not sure what it will bring or what it will mean. But it's something that has been we're very used to debt as the financing instrument, and we really want to expand the use of equity financing. Another element is really improving our business intermediaries. So there are business accelerators, business incubators, really where the deal flow should be developed. Somebody had mentioned it earlier that we need to try and get a big mass of businesses being established, trained in a particular way, understanding how to manage their businesses, and these institutions play a key role in that type of rollout. So, even for this Iep project, I expect that our intermediaries will be playing a key role in just how the knowledge is transferred to businesses and individuals. I see a couple participants from our intermediary grouping that are here, so I'm very happy to know that seems to be the place we're going. And then just some other aspects of ecosystem which I think are very critical to this work is technology transfer, IP commercialization, and, you know, between Rochelle, Melanie, we've been talking about training programs for, you know, to just address the mindset and culture of entrepreneurship. There are 6 products. I would just quickly run through and say that.
Chris, sorry, just to say that your slide's not moving enough. So I don't know if you want to share the slides as you go and wrap up.
Oh.
Could share the slides or move them further.
Yeah, well, I'm sharing, but I'm not sure what seems to be the
moving.
issue.
Maybe put a slideshow mode because yeah, the slides you're stuck on the first slide.
First one. That's all right. That's fine. So just to mention, you know, the bank has grant projects for businesses doing innovation. There are different products. So if you are in your startup phase, then you're able to get access to grant financing along with technical assistance. If you are really trying to scale your business, there are grants available for you as well as us introducing a venture capital fund that should be launched next year. So the individuals that have this type of intellectual property, the venture capitalists and other equity investors will tell you that that is a valuable asset. Many times they'd want it to be patented first, which really gives you first mover advantage or allows you to take advantage of other opportunities. That it's an important thing to recognize your intellectual property and then move towards, you know, really securing it for yourself so that you can then try to monetize it. So it's something that we're looking to, and I guess this is on the providing financing to individuals or businesses in that particular space, right? And just to say that, you know, a key aspect, as I mentioned, is on technology transfer. So we are looking to establish a technology transfer office in Jamaica that will really be converting this intellectual property that is created by our individual businesses or individuals themselves into something that can be monetized. And, you know, that's a whole process. I'm sure Marek will welcome that type of transfer activity here. And, you know, it's an essential part to us really just growing the use of intellectual property, as in what we're really trying to do is create value from it, right? And that's a key aspect. In the coming months, we are planning on launching I would say a call for technologies. So people who have created things, whether it's patented, not patented, patentable, we really want to see those technologies that are here locally. Melanie made mention of how creative Jamaicans are. It's not just in the creative industries, right? Like music and film and animation that we are very much used to hearing about. But there are other aspects that things that people develop, but whether it's through the lack of funding or the lack of exposure and knowledge, they don't move beyond just that idea, right? We really want to see those things come out. You know, part of the plan is to help with the patenting and registration of it. So we're likely to have, you know, grants that can help individuals to go through that process. As well as, you know, we have this concept to see if we can put some of those on an international platform for individuals to be able to identify and find. And Melanie spoke about operating in the digital space more, right? So we really want to create a system where if you have these ideas, these technologies, you know, your property that can be protected and put out there, it's possible for you to then be able to monetize those. And part of the Big E project is geared at helping a big part of that transfer from idea to something that can be marketed. I'll leave it there, Marcus. I'm sure there are people in the audience that have questions and want to hear. You know, I would really like to hear from them as to how they think we can contribute to their growth. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris. And we will make the slides available as well from all the presenters. Thanks very much. All right, so Fernando is in a different time zone. He's going to have to leave us shortly. He's in the UK, so I'm going to just ask Fernando to say any final words or to react to anything that's been said, before he departs. So Fernando?
Thanks very much, Marcus. Thanks everyone again. I just wanted to thank also great presentations by Melanie, Rochelle, and Christopher. I'm really happy to see that the banks and the institutions in Jamaica are really getting behind this, and with grants, with VC funds, with technology transfer offers, all extremely important, I think, in order to get where a lot of colleagues want to get with the things that they're creating, with their creativity, with their technology, with their innovations. I think it's really wonderful, and I think it's again, it's a learning opportunity for so many, as was discussed. I couldn't agree more with all the points that you've made, and specifically, I think on the learning side, the literacy, the engagement, the understanding, the changing ideas, exchanging ideas. It's really wonderful. I think I'm really looking forward to learn from everyone here as well. I'm really happy to be part of this project. I'm really looking forward to meeting all the innovators, all the entrepreneurs, all the business people, from government, right, participants, from institutions, private, non-private, academic. I think it's really a nice ecosystem. As many of you have said, just there's a step change now of people realizing that they can actually do different things, right, with this data economy and the things that they can create. That the world's at their hands now with the internet and a lot of developments now. Computing power increasing astronomically, so the bandwidth is going to be by the day increasing. And if they plant the seed and work on it day in, day out, and they'll surely get returns. And I think hopefully the most important is enjoy the process as well. I think that's what we want to really try to have during this course, is people to have fun, also like learn, but then exchange ideas, have their say, give their contributions. I want to learn a lot from everyone as well. So I think that's the main point that I wanted to say. The other just quick thing is, I think with valuation in all of this that we're talking about, and to all the participants that are listening, I would submit to you that think about it as a sport. We're going to all learn by doing. So the more you practice, the better you're going to get. So I submit, really think about it like a sporting event. We're just getting warmed up, and it's going to be a really nice next few months and years to come as well. So I'm really glad to be part of this at the moment. And again, as Marcus said, I'm in a different time zone, so I really apologize. I wish I could stay for longer, but I'm actually traveling at the moment. But it's been such an immense pleasure to see everyone face to face as well. The beauty of the new systems as well, right? That we can actually see each other face to face. It's so much better this way. Well, hopefully soon in person. I mean, that's the other thing, right? Hopefully we'll get to meet in person, face to face. But just wanted to thank again for the opportunity, Marcus. Great presentation, great organization and moderation. You and Kayanne that have been steering me as well in everything that we've been doing, and guiding me along the way. And really looking forward to next steps. And I really thank you for all the guidance as well.
Okay.
And just before Fernando goes, Marcus, I just want to support his work, especially where it's concerned. We, specifically with Rochelle and Melanie, we're really hoping that, you would help us to get some of the players out to receive this training, this valuation training, and how we could actually integrate the work of the project, especially in the valuation, in the development of the valuation guidelines, which valuation consulting will also be doing, because you have a track record, you've been dealing with this issue before. So we know we have your support, but I just wanted to put in that little plug for you, Fernando.
Thank you so much.
Right. Okay. So I've asked Mr. Hope if he could share the poster, the flyer. Mr. Hope, I was trying to share it a while ago, but it wasn't so easy. But so as Fernando said, he'll be doing some Iep Evaluation Training. And so we are inviting persons who are interested in doing Iep Evaluation Training to complete a short questionnaire that's currently available. And the link is there. You can complete it and submit it online, electronically. Could you have it look a bigger, please, Mr. Hope? I don't know if you can, or is it? Yeah. So that we will be starting on the 31st of next month of May, be commencing Iep Evaluation Training. So we're inviting persons again, whether you are in the creative industries, in the IP-based industries, you are in the banking sector, the financial sector, etc. You are in insurance, or you want to go into this new field, right? We're asking to sign up for this, but it's a short questionnaire, and the link is there, and it will be led by Fernando and his team. So thanks again, Fernando, for that. The timeline, the deadline to complete is next week, Friday, May 7th. So we can then finalize and prepare for the 31st. But
can I say just one more quick thing, Marcus? Do you mind? The other thing that I wanted to just submit to everyone as well, we're going to be focusing on Iep evaluation primarily, but in the course, I'm going to try to give you a flavor as well of how to think about the global company valuation, right? And then so you can have that sense of like, what is my company's value when you're going to actually seek the investment? But then of the company value, how much is the IP as a percentage of the company value? So I think that those sort of skills that we're going to also try to teach you, which will be very, very helpful when you speak to different colleagues and submit your ideas for funding. So I hope that's quite useful. But yes. Then again, yeah. So again, thanks everyone for everything, and it was a pleasure. And I look forward to catching with everyone soon.
Right, look forward to the workshops as well and the outcomes of the consultancy. Thank you very much, Fernando, for joining us, and wish you well. Have a good evening and a good weekend.
Yeah, have a nice day, everyone. We'll speak soon.
Walk good, as we say.
All right, so let's open the floor for questions and comments. I know we've heard a lot. It's been a really full discussion, a lot of information. We try not to overload it, and we try to keep it simplified, right? Following Rochelle's guidelines. So fully, we would like to engage with you, the audience. If you have any questions or comments, or would like us to clarify any aspect that you've heard today, please feel free to ask any of our panelists, our speakers, about what you've heard about the project, what you can become involved. Please feel free now, the floor is open. You can unmute or type it in the chat. Actually, there were some questions earlier, which I might just go back to.
Yes, there were a few way up the top, and one of the things I wanted to ask Marek if he could respond to is what Rochelle had described about the dramatic increase in business formation over the past year, how from the point of view of the opportunity to present this pilot on financial solutions based on, IP asset or collateralization, IP as collateral. How do you see, your work, your assignment in response to this reality?
Yeah, thank you, Kayanne, and that's a great question. I think Rochelle mentioned several critical points, which also connect to what Melanie was describing as well. On the one hand, we have a tremendous business growth in terms of businesses being formed and new assets being generated. And on the other hand, we have what Rochelle mentioned, what is legislation? These commerce people don't even understand the basic terms. Even though Jamaican security transactions law may be ranked 15 in the world, it refers to intellectual property once. So we can't expect the lender to know how to operate it, and we can't expect the borrower to educate the lender how to loan him the money against that particular IP. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done, which is not different from what Rochelle was describing on reverse factoring. So we have this umbrella legal framework that is loaded with legal terms. It is an enabling statute, but we need to translate it into something concrete, whether it is for receivables, such as in these reverse factoring programs, and here we're dealing with IP, so that we need to put it in what Melanie was describing, that local language and the kinds of videos that she was showing, so that lenders understand what the process, the legal and regulatory process is, where the actual risks are, and educate them on the steps that they may need to take, so that we're not just dusting off the Rembrandt here. I think we're putting into a non-fungible token and selling off for $60 million, hopefully.
So yeah, I think that what we continue to see from JIPO's point of view is that, as you say, we have the need to repeat the basic in terms of how to register and the importance of IP rights and what IP is, right? While of course trying to encourage other persons who may be more advanced and who may want to, and are utilizing new technologies and need new platforms, they need new frameworks to be able to really carry them further. When we think of the digital environment and digital IP assets, one of the things that I'm really excited about and seeing the future of, is what is being projected to occur through the new blockchain platforms, and the utilization of some of what we see now as the non-fungible tokens that are being used for IP assets, to again create monetary spaces, that can have the creator have more control of his IP assets from his home, from his living room, right, on his laptop, and being able to go to market just through that simple use of technology. And so how can that be properly structured again and monetized, to have the artist and the animator and the songwriter and the performer, being able to see and track and trace their revenue streams, through, again, use of the available technologies is, I think, very key. And unless we, again, prepare for that environment, recognizing the knowledge era that we are in now, then we will still be stuck with some of these analog platforms that don't properly monetize our IP assets, So I think it's really key in that respect as well. And so I know we still have some way to go in that regard, but it's, I think, something that we have to bear in mind, because that is certainly what we see happening now, and so while persons want to use some of the reggae, they want to use some of the culture, they want to use some of the assets that we have here, it's for us to put in place the mechanisms to be able to properly receive the revenue that is due to us for those uses. And so I think that's what we're doing through this project, trying to have some of that established in a transparent way, right, with the full participation, of course, of our stakeholders, our IP owners, right? I see a question, I saw a question earlier in the chat, which I'm going to just present now. So earlier we were discussing, leveraging and how to use IP for gain. The question was asked, I think, by Mr. Jackson, Kevin Jackson from Jamaica Animation Nation Network. Does JIPO help registered IP owners with strategies to leverage their IP or with valuating IP? Or is that entirely up to the creator? Right. So yes, certainly JIPO provides a system of registration primarily and proof of ownership, right? But in terms of the business strategy, the business plan to commercialize and monetize and market and the profit from it, that is then the IP owner's responsibility, right? To do. But yes, we of course see that there's a need for this environment to be assisted, and that's what we're trying to do now, to have you as the creators, the IP owners, be able to have more access to financing, to grow, to improve your creative outputs, right? But we at JIPO do not assist with that aspect. That is more on the business commercialization, entrepreneurship side. And so there are other supporting agencies that will help you to do that. But we wouldn't, right? I saw a question also just posted in the chat. Let me see.
Sorry, Marcus, I think also on that end, the DBJ, Chris can speak to, or I think mention that the DBJ does provide, technical assistance grants for some of these kinds of services, and has a network of service providers and professionals who are part of their cadre of professionals who provide business advice. So that's an avenue for Mr. Jackson and other SMEs.
Okay. Okay. Important as well. Right. So, right, what we want to have in this is that the services can be accessed by across a wide spectrum, right? So sometimes persons feel that certain IP assets may have more commercial value, and that's fine. I mean, I think we appreciate that the IP rights are different, but they have things in common. But certainly here, we want to recognize that what we are fairly wealthy in is a lot of copyright-based works, creative works, but also, as Chris said, scientific innovations too that are not properly being protected, are not properly being put in the pipeline to be able to bring back revenues to us. And again, it's an ecosystem. We have been doing fairly well, as you've heard, in the Global Innovation Index. We'll be having a forum on that on the 19th and the 20th of May coming up to again show how the different parts of the system need to operate together, to be able to properly then have these outputs of creativity available on global markets for us to be able to reap some of the fruits of that labor. And so I think once we can see what's being done in different locations, private sector, public sector, in our schools as well, right, it's going to be quite critical. So Chris, is it the work that you're doing now in terms of the DBG's work on this, the younger persons in our society, the young entrepreneurs? Is there any work that is there, or any particular projects or products that we can maybe have that are targeted for our young entrepreneurs?
Yes, Marcus. So, well, firstly, a program that helps businesses get access to services. I had put the web link in the chat, dbjvoucher.com.
Yes.
So that's one good starting point. After that, there are different business incubation acceleration programs that are put on, whether that's from the JBDC, the JMEA, Technology Innovation Center. So different entities put on these types of programs. I would just encourage businesses to support, to apply to get into those. They're made available. The bank's view is we're strengthening those entities so that they can do these programs more frequently or on a wider scale. Currently, it might be once a year, dependent on resources and support. So we're really looking to try and expand their capabilities in doing programs that would support startups and so forth. And then we have, grant programs. There's an Ignite program, which applications actually closed today.
Okay.
Your young businesses, micro businesses, to be able to access grant financing to develop their idea further, realize that particular idea.
Okay, cool. So a lot is already out there. I think sometimes as well, MSMEs don't always know where to access the funding. And there's funding out there. There's opportunities, there's scholarships, there's capacity building, there's technology transfers, but it's not always centralized. On Monday, we had with us Mr. Oral Shaw from the MSME division, and he spoke a lot about this project and about the work being done by PSOJ and Rochelle and BOJ and Melanie and so forth. So I know that there is that effort that is there to coordinate and centralize some of these activities. That's also very useful, I think, for the MSMEs particularly. Okay, I see a question from Sandra Glasgow was asking, will the training address accounting for IP values? So yes, Sandra, it will. The training being done by Fernando will look at the traditional methods of valuation and some of the IP aspects utilized, and that will include the accounting methods as well in IP valuation. So I think that's what you meant. Yes, he will definitely be including that. It's a quite detailed training program he has outlined, actually. You have it here. It's about a 4-page training program, very detailed. There'll actually be 2 rounds of training. So the first round of training is going to be for persons who are generally interested, maybe again you're an IP rights owner or accountant, etc., and you want to learn about it. And then in the second phase, we're going to go in a bit more detail with the training. And that one, we hope to have some certification of persons who will then be recognized, as it were, as Iep evaluators, Iep evaluators, for us to have, some ecosystem presence for that and for services to be offered thereafter. So it's a two-phase the process. The first one being more open. The second one is going to be for persons who are now going to be committed to doing this with a view to having, again, some kind of certification.
For the first round, we're also inviting the business intermediary organizations, or BSIs or BSOs. There are a few acronyms, the accelerators and so on, who do help to provide business development services. We're also inviting those persons or organizations to participate in the first round, kind of not necessarily train the trainer, but to become familiar with valuation and be able then to introduce and to help us to iterate the importance of valuation to their constituents. So we also ask for those persons and those institutions to share and to subscribe to the initial round. I think, Marcus, you mentioned the certification, right?
Yes.
Right. So we hope to certify valuers and be able then to have these valuers provide services to financial institutions, to SMEs as well. The valuation guidelines will also work together with the financing product, which would be piloted. So we also want to iterate that process together with the components and together with the key stakeholders, the financial institutions and the private sector, the regulators as well.
Right. Thanks, Kayanne. I see a question from Mr. Blenman in the chat. It says, virtual businesses were in part snubbed prior to COVID-19. Given the investment to build out these as real valuable businesses, what do you think of the establishment of a regional stock market for virtual businesses? Can they be valued and listed in due course? So who would want to take that one, a view on the regional stock market for creative assets? Who from a panel would tackle that one? I'm gonna maybe let me ask Kayanne first, and then maybe I can ask Melanie.
I think it's important. I wouldn't refine the creation of the regional stock market just for virtual businesses, but I do support the idea of a regional stock market or an exchange for businesses generally, and for the valuing and so on to be done. But I think there are more issues that would need to be considered in terms of the virtual businesses to support the idea of just a stock market. A case would need to be proven for what is so special about a virtual business that needs a separate stock market. So I think I would support an integration into a regional marketplace. The issue of the IP, the intellectual property asset or intellectual asset-based businesses, I think is an important one. The creation of a secondary market is important, and those who are familiar with me know I've been pushing this idea about building an exchange to facilitate trade in intellectual assets. And so a stock market for these kinds of businesses would facilitate that. But there are more, the gaps need to be filled before we mature to that. But certainly, I think it's where we would want to go in terms of Caribbean businesses or regional businesses being able to trade, as a block.
The stock exchange, yes, yeah. Yes. Melanie, any views on that question?
Just to support what Kayanne said, I think we are also at a very fundamental stage that before you can even agree with the secondary market for IP, but before we can even think of having a separate marketplace, if you will, for virtual businesses, we need to remember that whether or not you're operating in a virtual space or brick and mortar, you're still an entity that has to comply with certain requirements. You have to be, established based on the legal requirements. You should be tax compliant and at a minimum, and you should in fact be engaged in the whole process of interacting with your consumers. So you should have appropriate governance arrangements in place, appropriate business processes documented that would then allow you to list on any market. So before we even reach to the stage of having a separate, it's not that if you had a separate exchange, each exchange or each marketplace that is created because there's a need for it. There is an already developed base, consumer base of investors rather, that would want to engage in actually acquiring ownership or an interest within these businesses. And you're talking about equity ownership. Or you may be talking about trying to have bonds. Either way you look at it, the actual business itself, be it virtual or be it physical, would have to have the arrangements in place that would allow it to be able to meet the requirements of that exchange in terms of being listed, having their particular security listed on that exchange. And that's why it goes back to the whole question of financial literacy. We have to get to this stage whereby we create, I think, an avenue, a pipeline, and this goes back to Kayanne's point, a pipeline whereby micro entrepreneurs that are engaged in IP content creation see themselves as benefiting either from angel investment or from venture capital investment and having an exit onto a stock exchange if they so choose. It depends on what they see as their future path. But we have to have the conversation with the business owners, and Rochelle, you're also doing a lot of work on this in terms of understanding what is it that the actual developer of the content wants. How much of an ownership stake is he willing to give up? This goes back to the work that PBJ has been doing around venture capital work, etc. If you understand what they're willing to give up, then you can decide how to create a market that better enables them to get exit to the wider investor pool. That's what I would say. So it's not an alternate universe. And bear in mind, BOJ is all about the digital space. We're looking at central bank digital currency, where we're all about digital literacy as well. But first, we have to deal with underlying challenges that we have, plugging the gaps, like Kayanne said. I am sure if we were to sit down with a group of entrepreneurs engaged in IP content creation, and you mentioned to them, okay, do you want a debenture? That just immediately, what are you talking about? We have to have this kind of conversation, as Rochelle has always said, break down the language and not talk to ourselves, which is what I think we've been spending a lot of years doing. So we are all on the same page about changing that. Before we create the market, we have to understand what the businesses actually want and need, and then we can create a secondary market that suits their needs. That's what I would say in response.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marcus, if I could just add, I think Kayanne and Melanie have really dealt with this question well, but I'm so glad the question was asked. And it's important that these questions are asked. And as Melanie said, I like how she put it, it's not an alternate universe. Because when we think of virtual businesses, we're creating this alternate universe for virtual businesses. Amazon is a virtual business. Uber is a virtual business. Airbnb is a virtual business. So I think if we come out of the headspace that if it's virtual, there's a certain, it's not a real business. Because when we look at a Microsoft and Apple, their businesses are based on IP. That's what those businesses are. The value of the business is in the IP that they're creating. And I think when we start translating the language of business so that we're able to see the examples and not see that when you're doing something virtually, that somehow it is no longer real. E-commerce is real. We all live on Amazon. But when we're doing it in Jamaica, all of a sudden we don't see it as real. But I think that, which is why the opportunity is great. Should we have a separate exchange for virtual businesses? No, because virtual businesses are just as real as brick and mortar businesses. And in fact, brick and mortar businesses have had to be changing their business model now, because if you don't have a digital transformation strategy, in fact, it's like you're not in business. So every AGM that you go to, the digital transformation strategy is the first slide that you are seeing. So MSMEs are also positioned because you are more nimble, because we are able to get things done faster, we have less layers. We are also positioned to be in a place to push the virtual and e-commerce in a different way than larger businesses who have had to kind of reverse their structures. So if we're also thinking about the businesses less from the debt financing, but asking ourselves, who will buy this business? What will cause them to buy this business? What will cause investors to invest? What will cause them to invest? Strong business model, your financials, how are you going to generate revenue, that you have proper governance around your business, which is the same thing that it would be required in any brick and mortar. So it's just bringing these two worlds together, that it's the same business concepts that move a brick and mortar business, a business that make juice, that make concrete, that it's that same business concept that flows over into a virtual business.
Yeah. All right. So, Rochelle, while you're there, then you have any final comments, or is it your final comment? I'm going to ask all speakers to give a final comment as we wrap up. So, I don't know if you want to say any final words, then, since you're on the floor now, before we wrap up.
Yes. So my final comment, I'm actually just going to go back to a statement that Chris had made about implementation, that implementation requires all the stakeholders in the ecosystem. So the conversation, as I had mentioned before, cannot just be amongst us. We have to bring the financial stakeholders into the conversation, the bankers, the credit unions, the microfinance lenders into this conversation. And at every step of the way, we always have to be asking ourselves who needs to be involved in this conversation, so that we don't create a system and structure and then have to reverse ourselves to have those conversations. Again, this is the right time for us. People, I think, are a lot more open to the opportunities that are presented in the IP they've already created and what they will create. We have the benefit of the internet now to get information. COVID has made us very used to doing Zoom webinars, so we're able to get a lot of people together in a short time and engaged. So let's not miss the opportunity, but at the end of the day, I would just urge that the project keeps asking itself, how do we implement this so that it moves from a beautiful concept document and paper into persons actually utilizing the systems, actually listing businesses on the stock exchange? So again, what is the end game? And we really want to see the revenue generation and the growth of businesses and the job creation that will come from this area.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Yes, that's precisely, why we wanted to have this forum this morning, and precisely why we have you all here too, make sure that we don't leave any of our key stakeholders behind that. But certainly we agree with that fully. We will be having a rollout to be inclusive. I saw a question asked earlier, how long will the training be? So again, in the online environment, we can't spend too much time online. So we're planning to do it in chunks. I think we're going to have it like 3-hour segments on Mondays and Thursdays over the course of 2 weeks, So you do a segment, I will have a break in between, maybe you get some homework in between too, right? Come back, and then we will take it in these type of chunks, So it's very manageable. That can be done while you're, of course, still trying to grow your business and to continue, right, to thrive. So thanks for that, Rochelle. Really insightful words. We look forward to working with the POCJ wholeheartedly on this, right? And so thanks for your positive support of the project. Okay, I'm going to ask Melanie. Melanie, you want to say any final words for us?
Thank you, Marcus. I want to thank you and Kayanne and the entire JIPO team for inviting VOJ to participate. It's also educational for us in VOJ. We are now in this space where we're using a lot more IP in financial inclusion. It's given us the opportunity to create a lot more content, and we're really learning from the industry. So going back to a comment that Nigel Cooper made, I agree. There is a need to educate large established firms, including banks, including regulators, on IP. Absolutely correct, Mr. Cooper, absolutely correct. There's so much to learn. So I'm personally looking forward to, and there's so much information available on JIPO website, but What I would say is communication is critical, communication in a language that people understand. And because of where we're going, Marcus, you and I had this discussion, those of us on the panel are bilingual. We're both analog and digital. So we flip between the two worlds easily. But we have a generation behind us, the millennials and the alphas, who are purely digital. And their attention spans mean you get to the point quickly. So if we can package the information that we want persons to really understand in bite-sized pieces that make it easy to understand the salient points of the legislation, such as Rochelle said, what is legislation? Let us demystify a lot of the language we use. And if we can take that similar approach to when we're having a conversation with a banker, because again, if IP professionals see themselves first as entrepreneurs engaging with businessmen and women engaging with another business, which is a financial institution, the language can flow in a very straightforward manner. But if the two groups are not speaking the same language, there's not going to be a meeting of the minds. And training on IP for the bankers is critical. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope to join all of your sessions virtually and get my team also trained. And you and I spoke about even having presentations being made to the wider legal group and so on, because there's so much to learn about this area. So thank you for having us. That's it.
Oh, pleasure. Really good that you could come and share. And I think we have a better understanding of what you're doing, and hopefully you have of what we're trying to do as well. You know. All right. So is Chris there? Chris Brown? I think we lost his video. I don't know if you're there, Chris. You have any final words to share before we wrap up? Might have lost Chris. Okay. All right. I'm seeing Chris. Okay, cool. Marek, any final words for us to share as we wrap up?
Thank you, Marcus. I would be just repeating what has been said many times over. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting us and for putting this wonderful program together. All of you who are part of this organization have done a tremendous job. We took on this project believing that this is different from everything else that we have done in the past 10 years, which yielded mixed results. This program and thus far what we have done and what we have heard from you just makes me more convinced that here we can actually achieve something. And truly after this program today, I'm more convinced than before. So thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Good. Because we need to have that confidence and yeah, that positivity, that we can do this, we can overcome the challenges that we recognize. Kayanne, any final words?
Yes, just final points is really to thank you all, panelists as well as the attendees, for your encouragement for the work that we are embarked on with our partners. One of the seminal takeaways from the conversation, I think it was triggered by something Melanie said, but it runs through a stream. I am a syncretic thinker, so I'm always connecting the dots. It shows us, I think from Fernando spoke about data and that the whole economy, the global economy has been changing to a data economy, which is different from the fourth industrial revolution stuff we usually talk about over the past 5 years or so. It's thinking data. What is the language of data? The language of data is language. The language of the intellect is language. The language of us here is language. The language of business is language. So it's really pointing to language as a bridge, because Rochelle spoke about it needing to speak, the creator needing to speak the language of the bank or the industry needing to speak the language of the industry, the creator, the owner. And even with our consultants from different nations, all from different nations, from Spain, from, well, a Russian sounding name, but from Arizona and from Barbados. It speaks to us about the opportunity we have truly to build a bridge through this project. And that is what we're going to aim to do. I've taught in my courses on IP before, and it's now coming to the surface, how important it is to communicate in the language of the person we're working with. And that is what we will aim to do. And we're excited about the opportunity to finally, mature the IP conversation into a new language. So thank you very much. Thank you, Marcus, and the JIPO support team as well for encouraging us and for working so hard for this project and to bring us to this bridge.
All right. Well, thank you to Kayanne for all the hard work and what's left to be done. I think this year, we'll be able to see if we get some payoff, some payout, right? Payout in terms of the positive outcomes of the project. But we certainly need to have, you all on board and to, have you inputting into each stage and phase of the project. So thanks to all our speakers. I have to thank, of course, Ms. Claire Bellamy, who moderated the first part of the program, our executive director. And of course, this is our last webinar for IP Week. So I have to, of course, thank also a hardworking IP Week planning committee and team. Of course, doing it this year virtually had some challenges, but a very inspiring teamwork and effort this year, my team. Thank you all. We have got a few new team members and younger team members. So again, we have made an effort this year to push our message more on the social media than we have in the past, recognizing, of course, also the digital transformation consequences of COVID. And so we too, are adapting and leading as we hope to in this change towards increased IP evaluation and financing. And I thank Miss Kayla Grant from the IDB, who has been again holding our hand through several years and through several projects, towards the objective of increasing the local landscape for innovation and IP rights. And so thanks, Kayanne and the whole IDB team. We're like family now, right? I want to thank Mr. Daniel Best of the CDB and Lisa Grant and the team from the CDB as well for, again, over several years, walking us through the process, holding our hands with this project, quite an involved procurement process, but we've learned through it all, and we look forward to your continued support as well on this exciting project. Thank also our consultants who we heard from. So we heard from Dr. Erica Smith from Intellect Management Services, who's doing component 1 of the project, right? Component 2, Dr. Fernando da Cruz Vasconcellos from Valuation Consulting out of the UK, who will be doing the training starting May 31st. It will be a 4-day training. So the dates are, you can put it in your diaries from now, those are interested, May 31st, Monday, May 31st, Thursday, June 3rd, Monday, June 7th, and Thursday, June 10th. Those are the proposed dates. We will confirm again, but if you're interested, please fill out the questionnaire that is on the poster that was shared. It will be emailed out and shared on our website and our social media platforms as well, so you can register by 7th of May, next week, Friday. So please do so. And of course, thanks as well to Dr. Marek Dubovec from Kozolchyk National Law Center and the team, Christina, and the whole team for all the hard work behind the scenes. We look forward to working with you as well through the course of this year to achieve the project objectives. Right, our panelists for this panel, I mean, I didn't even know when I started first we'd have such a rich panel, not financially, right, but in terms of expertise and perspective. So I have to thank okay, all right, yes, well, in many ways, right, but mostly with sharing their expertise on this subject and just the work that's ongoing, and again, sometimes it feels that we're in a vacuum, sometimes doing what we're trying to do, but when you hear what's being done elsewhere that is supportive, you feel more comforted, so thanks for that, Rochelle and Melanie, and Chris Brown as well too, for sharing what you're doing and your perspectives on this project with us. So I think that's really it for us. There's a poll that's being launched right now. Please take a few minutes to just answer the few questions. What else should I say? I think I will also say that next month, as I said before, on the 19th and 20th of May, we'll be hosting with the World IP Organization, WIPO, a forum on the Global Innovation Index. Jamaica has been noted for having done extremely well last year.
Aye.
RISE has been recognized by many countries globally because of our steep increase. And so we want to highlight that next one. We have to look at stakeholders, what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong, and how we can improve that overall performance for the GII index next year. Right? So that's on the 19th and the 20th of May, we do that forum. And as I said, the 31st of May, valuation training. So thanks again, everyone. If you want more details, please feel free to email us at JIPO. You heard from Kayanne, her email, project manager at jipo.go.km. Email us at info@jipo.go.km. Of course, you can email me as well, marcus.goffe. If you want to have all about this project, it's open not only to Jamaica, but also to a regional audience. Right?
So logos are trademark.
As well.
So you're telling me that all I need
increase
is
the
a
expertise
trademark?
across the region.
That's what you need.
You know, it's a little confusing. I would hope that you guys
again,
will
all
have
it's been
some
a really
form of
lovely
workshop or
ITV.
webinar or
A lot of hard
something,
work, but
Yes,
just to inform us of what is
we
happening.
have shown that it's
It
paid
is,
off.
it is,
And I
I'm
want to thank
happy
you all
that you
again
said that
for
because we
making
will
this
be
final
having
day
our
so
ITV
special
this week,
also.
our annual
So wish
ITV
you all a good Friday and
starting the 23rd of April
at the end
until
of
the 2nd
April,
of May.
right? I look
We will
forward
be
to
on
seeing you
all
all
the social
next
media
week as we
platforms,
present the
Facebook,
project next one.
YouTube, Instagram.
Thanks, everyone.
I believe
Thanks,
Twitter as well.
everyone.
So
Cheers
you can
now.
just go over there and just follow us and you can always see the live events.
And what's the date again?
The 23rd of April until the 2nd of May.
Oh, thank you. I will surely be there.
You are most welcome. Please do go ahead and follow us, all right?
Oh, okay, I
All right,
will.
let me just see your documents, please. All right, good. Just have a seat over there and I'll get someone to assist. Morning.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I am good, and you?
I am doing okay.
Awesome.
I'm here to copyright a trademark for my patent.
You want to copyright the trademark for your patent?
Yes.
All right, tell me exactly what it is that you want to do.
I have a logo and I want to get it registered.
Okay, so that is copyright, not patent. That's actually a trademark. So logos are trademark.
Oh, so you're telling me that all I need is just a trademark?
Yes, that's all you need.